To kick things off, please welcome our AI Plus newsletter author and Axios Chief Technology Correspondent, Ina Fried.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm thrilled to welcome you to San Francisco for our third AI Plus Summit of the year. We're in the hub of innovation, where generative AI is born, and more importantly, where the future is being written right now. Whether you're here in the room or joining us online, we're thanking you for being part of the conversation. You can follow along on social using the hashtag, say that fast, Axios AI Summit. As I mentioned, this is the third stop of the year. Earlier this year, we were in Washington, D.C. and New York, and we hosted guests including Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei, New York Governor Kathy Hochul, AMD CEO Lisa Su, and many others. And today, we're going to continue that momentum right here in my home turf, San Francisco. And I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention we're also in the nation's first and only transgender historic district. And of course, San Francisco is where we want to have this conversation because this is where AI has started. It's where it's redefining industry, policy, society. And today we're going to talk about that future, what it means for cybersecurity, education, policy, trust, business, et cetera. But I want to set the scene a little bit because I think it's really important, the conversation that hopefully we're having right now, that we need to be having right now. And I really remain of two minds around AI. On the one hand, I use it every day. I find it tremendously useful. Like our publisher, Nick Johnson, I took a Waymo here today. There's some really great uses of AI. And at the same time, I do worry that we're in danger of handing too much power too soon to a technology that by its nature is both flawed and biased. There's a lot of debate right now on whether the path we're on will even take us to AGI or superintelligence, or whether another approach is needed. So we're going to be talking about that. And you might have heard some talk about maybe there's a bubble. So to me, that discussion isn't so much, is AI real or is it not? But it's really about how fast the technology can evolve, but how fast we as a society can evolve. So it's not whether AI is real or not. The question is, how much should we be investing, how soon? And the bottom line, we have a lot to talk about today. So I'm going to be quiet in just a second. But I want to give you a few logistics, especially for those in the room. Your badge has a QR code on it with the Wi-Fi details, venue information, the schedule, et cetera. And don't forget, for those in the room, we will have a reception afterwards where we can network, have a drink. So stick around. We have a jam-packed program, but we do understand sometimes you need to send an email, talk on the phone. Please use the lounge upstairs, because if folks start talking in the back, it gets really hard and other folks can't hear. So there's a lounge on the second floor. Have an email, take a call, come back. And with that, I'd love to welcome my colleague Sam Sabin for our first discussion. Sam.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for spending a part of your busy, hectic month with us. I'm honored to be here. I'm Sam Sabin. I cover cybersecurity here at Axios, and I write the Future of Cybersecurity newsletter. Highly recommend signing up, but I might be a touch biased, so use that recommendation as you feel fit. AI, as many of you know, is rapidly changing the cybersecurity landscape, and I have the honor and privilege of chatting with one of the leaders who is thinking through how we need to adapt and think about that changing that landscape. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the CEO and chairman of Palo Alto Networks, Nikesh Arora. Nikesh, thank you.
I tried to slip again.
Yeah, Nikesh promised to do a backflip on the way out, and he has not fulfilled that promise. So we're off to a great start
Fantastic.
now. Yes. Maybe later we can backflip off and just get us off stage in style. But Nikesh, to start, we were chatting backstage about the joke that Ina just made about whether or not we're in an AI bubble, how real the hype is, how real the impact is of AI on the cyber threat landscape. Where do you sit in this right now? How are you thinking about that?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. This is beautiful.
Yeah.
And thank you for letting me get in and out of here first, so I don't have to listen to all the AI hype afterwards. Oh, sorry, never mind. Yeah. I think the AI stuff is real, right? Why do I say that? In the last 3 years, we've seen people commit hundreds of billions of dollars to building more compute. If you look historically, very rarely have we built some version of technology that hasn't been fully consumed.
Yeah.
And we've always been wanting more. If you remember, I remember my first email, and I was very excited. And one video was sent around the company, and somebody clicked on it, the whole internet went down in the company. Now we all watch stuff on our phones with gay abandon, and somebody said there's going to be only so many mobile phones or so many desktops. So I think from our ability as society to consume technology, we have a voracious appetite, and anything we can build on the AI front is not going to be enough. I think there's untapped demand on the consumer side, so you will see lots and lots of AI being used on a constant basis. I'm surprised how much AI we are consuming at Palo Alto, despite us being, I'll say, balanced as opposed to skeptical. We're not overtly enthusiastic, we're balanced, but we're consuming it. So I think the demand is there.
Yeah.
To the extent, I think we're going to run into a physics problem. Can we get enough electricity? Can we get enough resources? Can we build fast enough? So to the extent that the physics doesn't allow us to get there fast enough, you might see things be slower than we want them to, but I don't think it's from a demand perspective we have a challenge. I do think valuations are all over the place, and people do get excited sometimes because they say, this is the biggest thing that's going to happen. I want to be in here at any price. And I don't think all the winners are clear.
Yeah.
Every 6 months, somebody says, oh my God, Google's done. OpenAI's got it. Now OpenAI seems to have a little been muddled, and Google's going to get it, and Anthropic's doing great. So I think the cast of characters will change over the next 5 years. But yes, there will be big winners in this space. There'll be a tremendous amount of AI built. And pretty much anybody in this room or not in this room, our jobs will be done fundamentally differently in 5 years, including mine.
Yeah.
I'll just send somebody here.
Perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. And I'll interview them, or my replica will.
Yes, exactly. Our replicas will talk to each other. We'll be playing golf or doing something
Right,
else.
awesome. And we'll be drinking
Yes.
wine and hanging out. That would be perfect.
Fantastic.
But for now, I have to keep asking you questions. Sorry about that. I'm curious. I want to rewind to something that you just mentioned, right? Which is that Palo Alto Networks itself is consuming AI.
Yes.
You guys are experimenting with it. Walk us through how your teams are using it. I know that varies. You have a large company,
Yes.
and maybe how your teams are using it. And I'm also curious how you yourself are using it.
Yeah, I don't think I search anymore.
Okay.
I just go to Gemini and ask it a lot of questions and try and get smarter about things. It reads a lot of things for me and gives me lots of summaries. Think tokens. Every time I read something, it's probably spinning up 4 or 5 tokens, which is costing more money from an AI perspective, consuming AI. But I find it's very good at summarization and pattern recognition, much better than any employee that I have. And think repetitive use cases where we use brawn more than brain in the organization. We use brawn. We have 3,000 customer support reps. You don't need everybody to reinvent how we support customers. Pretty much the problems are known. Can I pattern recognize and solve it faster? My friend Zainab is here somewhere from Atlassian. She used to be our chief marketing officer. I had a meeting just now. It's like, how can I do the job of 100 product marketing people using AI so I can have smart people read everything and figure it out in 3 people? So a lot of the repetitive tasks will go away and be replaced by a different set of people.
Yeah.
So we're doing it. It's working. People are experimenting. Interesting use cases are showing up. And this is going to be incremental. It's not going to be, oops, one day suddenly you found that 4,000 people no longer work here. Everything has to be re-architected from a process and a competence basis. That's going to take time. Many of these things will become, I have a new word, it's called AI ass. My daughter doesn't like it because it sounds not right.
Sure.
But it's AI as a service instead of SaaS. I think SaaS applications over time get overtaken by AI as a service as opposed to software as a service. And that will have a fundamentally different workflow associated with it, which will allow us to get our jobs done better, faster, easier.
Yeah, totally. I want to maybe use this as an opportunity to talk about the M&A strategy that you have been pursuing, right? You and I could not get this number down backstage. I
Yes.
thought it was 28 acquisitions in the last 7.5 years. You're telling me 29. So you've been
Plus
on a
minus
buying
3%.
spree. Right.
Yes.
A bit of a buying spree. This year, my recollection is that it's been Protect AI, CyberArk, and then as of a few weeks ago, Chronosphere.
So far. Yes.
So far, and we'll get to
We got 3
that.
weeks left,
Hold on
yes.
to that thought. I would love to hear about how this M&A strategy is helping Palo Alto Networks prepare for the AI-enabled threat landscape that we're starting to see. How are you thinking through what you buy? How do these 3 companies help you? Things like that.
Okay, great. So let's break that into 2 parts. Okay, first, let's talk about how AI interacts or impacts cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure all of you are cybersecurity experts, so you'll understand all the technical details about a spouse. So we'll save that for another time. Most simplistically, the more technology we use, the more ways bad people can attack us. Use email, I can get your email. Use your phone, I can get your phone. Your trading app is open to the internet, I can get into the trading app. So anything you use in technology, if you talk to the internet, it's a way for somebody bad to come into your life. Whether you're sending a text, somebody can come back in. So if you believe that, AI is expanding what we call the attack surface for bad actors. If I'm going to have 5,000 agents, guess what? I can hack every one of those 5,000 agents. So the more technology you use, the more you create an expansion of your attack surface, which means bad guys can get into your business as quickly as you can. Traditionally, cybersecurity has been about, great, let's put security guards at every attack surface end so I can be protected. Well, it's not working. People get breached every day, right? Somebody just used a large LLM to go do a breach. So we're saying AI shifts the requirement. It says, let's assume for a second you're going to get attacked. How quickly can you find it and how quickly can you block it? It's a fundamentally different way of thinking about it, saying don't spend all your money in protection, spend your money in what we call detection and remediation. And if you believe agents are going to work, if you believe AI is going to work, then these things should be really smart at finding out bad shit's going down. Then the question is, can you give them the power to remediate, to fix it? So we think AI is going to be very useful in the detection and remediation world, which is where cybersecurity needs to live. Cybersecurity has lived fundamentally in the protection world, and that's not working.
Yeah.
Because protection means you have to basically ring fence everything 100% of the time and be on guard 100% of the time.
Right.
Doesn't work from a psychological perspective. Sorry?
Assume breach.
Assume breach, in which case you go there. Now, putting that in the context of the M&A conversation you asked about, because the industry has been working on the protection scenario for too long, they haven't spent enough time and effort on the other side. And there's lots and lots of startup, interest factoid. The largest number of startups are in cybersecurity every year, not in AI. Maybe this year it'll be a little more AI, some of you guys. But so if you believe that, there's tons of amazing innovation going on out there. We're just like a large, old, slow company. We got to go make sure we find these really smart people who have these great ideas, understand how they're going to fix the problem, and then make them be part of our strategy. So that's what we do. We find the best people out there, we buy the best companies, we make them part of Palo Alto, and we distribute them to our customers.
Yeah, and I think you started hitting at this next question there, but I would love to maybe break down the economic advantage of buying CyberArk in particular, right? That was a $25 billion deal, which is not something that maybe, is small by any means, right?
It's smaller than $1 trillion.
Sure, there you go.
It just depends on what you're comparing it to.
It's all about how you frame it.
Exactly right.
And I would choose to say that that's big. It's 25 billion, right? And Palo Alto Networks, yes, is an older cybersecurity company. You have a lot of employees, but you have a lot of really smart employees. I'm curious if you can walk me through the economics of how purchasing a company like CyberArk was maybe a better deal than maybe trying to turn to your employees internally, seeing if you can build something similar to compete with CyberArk.
Look, CyberArk's been around for 15 plus years. They've built a phenomenal business in what is called the identity management space, or the privileged access space. The way to think about it is we're a $10 plus billion revenue company, we're a $130 billion market cap, and for us, we've hit what I call enterprise scale. At our level, we can run a business, we have 16,000 employees, we can run a business effectively, efficiently in the market and scale. I think any company which is less than $2-3 billion in revenue is subscale, and eventually either they go to zombie land or they have to work really hard to get to 10 billion on stage. That's what happens in enterprise, because the biggest cost in enterprise is the cost of sales, marketing, and supporting the customer. Yeah. We do this at scale now. So now our job is to find amazing companies which are in the subscale world, see if you can bring them onto our platform and run them equally efficiently. And CyberArk is such a great company that people don't get rid of them. They always use their product. They have 100% retention almost. We just think we can run them faster, better, and together.
Yeah.
So just for those people who are mathematically inclined, you take a $25 million company, if you can improve their margins by 50%, it must be worth more if it was rightfully valued. If you can increase their growth rate by a few hundred basis points, it should be worth more.
Yeah.
We're going to hopefully do both.
Totally. And I'm wondering, maybe it was divine timing. I was talking with CyberArk maybe a couple weeks before you guys announced the deal, just around the threat of AI agents, right, and the security concerns around agents.
Everybody should be scared of AI agents and buy more Palo Alto. Yes, go on, sorry.
Perfect. And we'll get back to that sales pitch in about 2 seconds here, which is, there is this increasing concern about how you secure the identity of an agent, right? Do you treat them in the same way as a human? Probably not. It's not the same.
Are you going to let an agent have its own identity?
Right. Do you give them a username and password, or do you tether it to Sam's identity and then secure it that way, right? There are so many
What would you like?
ways. Oh, I don't know. Please don't ask.
You have to know. Do you want an AI agent to be equal to a human, or do you want it to be?
What is the AI agent doing, though?
I don't know.
Right? It's the question.
Your agent, you decide.
Listen, let's see what happens. Please don't ask me. I'm going to interview some smart people and ask about that first, and then I'll get back to you.
There's a lot of people coming later. Ask them what an AI
right. Maybe walk me through how you're thinking through. It feels like you're making a big bet on the fact that companies are actually going to want to think through those issues, and how are you thinking about what the threats are of AI agents in terms of security? Is it actually just they're going to go rogue? Is it how realistic is it that they could access data that they shouldn't? Things like that.
It depends on how people define AI agents. Yeah. In my mind, the most obvious example, since we're sitting in San Francisco, is a Waymo.
Yep.
It's out there. There's no human involved. It makes its own decisions. It decides when to stop, when to move, when to go. And we have fundamentally given it autonomy to be the equivalent of a human being. Scary as hell and expensive as hell. It costs tens of billions of dollars to get that one human clone effectively to work well. Now, if you think that's the future of agents, which means I can replace every human with all the autonomy and all the brains and all the processes, then yes, you gotta watch out they don't go rogue on you, because if they go rogue, they can do things you don't want them to do.
Yep.
You can watch out nobody takes them over.
Yep.
So there's a whole series of things you want to do in terms of making sure you can protect, you can make sure those agents don't get hijacked. Now, you hear this everywhere. I'm sure Clay Bavor is going to come later and talk about AI agents doing customer support, and he can spin up 5,000 agents. Well, if you have 5,000 new agents, you need a way to manage them, give them credentials, give them passwords, give them usernames you want to, and secure them. So if you believe the future holds multiple agents per human being, then we're going to have an expansion in the identity of these technological objects. And if you're in the identity security business, that sounds like a good problem to have. Yeah. The more identities you want me to protect, the more I will want from you to protect those identities.
Yeah.
And I don't do identity yet, but CyberArk is the best company in the identity space, so they'll do that, and we'll just make sure they do it faster, better, and cheaper.
Totally. And maybe the answer to this next question is identity. Maybe it's not.
The answer to every question is identity when you spend $25 billion, yes.
There you go, perfect.
At least for a while, yes,
awesome.
But go on. What's the question?
Forget observability. Why would we talk about
soon,
that?
Soon.
That's a joke on the Chronosphere deal for those who aren't clued in. But I'm curious, when you are talking with other board members or C-suites of various companies who maybe are trying to buy Palo Alto Networks or you're trying to sell, right? What is maybe one category of AI-driven security threats that you think is totally misunderstood at this point or not talked about enough?
Well, AI security is not talked about.
Yeah.
Almost anybody in this room who's building a startup or working on AI, if you spend more than 2% of the time thinking about security, you're slower than your competitor. So you're not. And I see many AI startups, if they think I know something, they come talk to me and see if I can invest in them and help them. Nobody's thinking about security. It's like the first thing to tell, well, let me spin up a model, and the model's going to take your data, put it in the model, we're going to shake it up a little bit, put a little wrap around it, and give you an outcome. Well, how do you make sure the model doesn't take my data and her data and put it together? Well, don't worry about it. It's like, well, how do you make sure that the model's not a cheaper model which we got on Hugging Face and it was made in North Korea?
Right.
Oh, don't worry about it.
Right. Trust us.
How do you know that the model's not going to wake up 6 months later and take all my data and send it on an internet, fast track to some other third world country? I don't know. Trust me. Well, that's why we exist. I love it when people say, trust me, we got it covered.
Right.
That's when people say, can you come help us?
Right.
So I think there's the AI startup world, the AI LM world, the vibe coding world, it's the Wild West from a security perspective. We're good guys, hence we try and help our customers protect against it, but I'm pretty sure any company that is using AI in some way, shape, or form at some degree of scale has more security issues than in everything else in their infrastructure, because you just haven't spent the time to get this right. So, AI can only be useful if you take my data as a company, as an enterprise. Anything that takes your data, better treat it with lots of love, care, and security and privacy.
Yep.
Those things are still being built.
Yeah. Yeah, and before I kind of transition us fully into talking about the threat landscape, what that looks like, et cetera, I do want to ask, you hinted earlier that perhaps you were still on a buying spree.
Oh, I didn't. I'm just messing with you.
Yeah,
My shareholders
I
are
don't
listening.
think you are messing
My shareholders
with
are
me.
listening.
I'm curious what kinds of companies or what areas of interest.
Should I just give you the names?
Sure. Let's call them right now.
It's
see
easier.
how make a deal right here.
It's
Why
easier.
not?
Let's just give her the names.
Perfect.
Different Axios.
Great. And
I'll tell you
heard
the
it here
price, and we're
first.
done.
That's what we want.
Yeah, I'm not buying anything.
Come on,
right
Nikesh.
now. I'm not buying anything right now. I gotta digest the ones I just bought.
Sure. Okay.
Yes.
You sure?
100%.
All right.
Right now, I said I'm not buying anything right now. I'm talking to you.
All right. If anyone hears that Nikesh is calling you, please call me, and we'll figure this out.
Sounds like a plan.
Right. Okay. So bringing it to the threat landscape, there's so many different types of threats that we could probably spend the next few minutes talking about. There's deepfake enabled fraud, there's AI phishing, there's now automated AI or LLM enabled orchestrated attacks that we're hearing about. I'm wondering, from where you guys sit at Palo Alto Networks, you have so many customers who are wrestling with this. Do you have maybe a concrete example of how you're seeing AI playing out in the threat landscape, things that are actually for real coming up and aren't just a hypothetical, oh, this could happen, maybe it will happen type of thing? Where are we now?
Okay. So let's break this into two parts. One,
Sure.
When you have a bad actor, what are they trying to do? In the consumer world, generally what they're trying to do is either embarrass you or take your money. Send $50 to your cousin in Africa and everything will be great. And they're trying to figure out ways. All these texts I get every day, somebody, oh, I haven't heard from you in a long time. So who is this person? So they're trying to find a way in getting into your psyche and getting you to give them some money, whether it's through sending a text message, an email, a phishing scam, send you a video of your uncle trying to ask for money. These are all the consumer scams. You'll be surprised, there's tens of billions of dollars that get sent by unsuspecting people to these scamsters. And these scamsters just got AI agents to help them.
Yep.
Where they had to send the text themselves, now they have a battery of agents who can send text. Where they had to send one text to 100 people, they have 100 customized texts they can send. So they just got, if you're a marketing person, their lead generation conversion just got amazing, and their ROI is going to go up with AI.
Yeah.
So this is a problem. And with the inclusion of deep fakes and all the customization, they begin to become more real, and they have to be on guard. And like I hear in the personal space, make sure your family has a safe word, because you never know if it's truly your son or your daughter or your parent calling you. It could be anyone using deepfake, and AI is going to make sure. I'm sure some of you are building AI that can build videos and make it just look like me talking to my kids. So that's on the consumer side. If you go the enterprise side, eventually bad actors are either trying to interrupt your business or extort you for money. Right? Whether it's using whichever technique, it doesn't matter. Eventually they want to get into your crown jewels, steal them, and use them for competitive advantage, sell them to someone, or say, hey, give me $50 million or I'm going to shut you down. That's what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So, as I said right at the beginning, if you abstract it down, if you say, I'm not going to worry about all the products I'm going to put on the outside, I'm just going to worry about, if I see a bad thing happening, can I use AI to find out quickly that it's happening? Can I pattern recognize? Can I use LLMs? Can I use any technique to do that? And then can I go in and intercept, right?
Yeah.
So AI is making it faster to attack people. We need to use it, make it faster to defend people.
Yeah.
And that's how it's going to manifest itself. As all of you know in this room, anyone who's building an AI app or an AI capability, AI requires more data. There's not enough good data in the world. How do they train a Waymo? They had tons of people say, this is a tree, this is a pole, this drive right, drive left. Like, there's billions of data points that were created to make sure that AI can be trained to be precise. Similarly, to do anything right, you need lots of data, even to customer support. You need every inflection of the customer support event to understand how to solve the problem the next time. Similarly, in cybersecurity, we need more data. So cybersecurity is going to become a data problem, if it hasn't already. So we've been training our guns for the last 2 years to more and more towards where we ingest data, analyze data using AI, so we can be more real time and more right now.
Yeah, I'm sure you're in.
That's where we bought observability, in case you want to know.
Perfect. I am going to try and squeeze 2 questions in the last few minutes that we have. But the first one, I'm sure you're in these conversations as well. I'm increasingly in conversations, which probably you've been in them for months if they're finally coming to a journalist to tell them this, but where people are really concerned that attackers are going to have the upper hand, right? We're going to see advancements in the use of AI tools on the attacker side faster than we'll see it on the defender side. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask someone who is leading one of the leading defense companies how they feel about that timeline.
True. Yeah. It's true. Look, we can build all the tools you want. The customers have to embrace that strategy quickly. If the customers don't let us in and work with them to put all the plumbing in place, which can take a while, we're not going to be able to respond as quickly. The bad actors have to be right once, we have to be right 100 times out of 100. So it's unbalanced. Can they go, like you saw recently, as I said, they used an LLM to go attack a company, and the LLM was able to figure out, oh, it didn't work, try this, didn't work, try this, didn't work. By the time 25 minutes were up, you were breached. Well, you got to have things on the other side which are moving at the same speed with data. So yes, there is an unfair advantage the bad actors have, and the only thing you can do if you're an enterprise is to get your shit together so you're responding at the same pace that they're able to attack you.
Yeah, and with all of that in mind, this will be my last question for you, unfortunately. You have like a plane to catch or something, but we have executives from some of the leading AI companies who are going to be on stage today. You are the only security voice who is going to be here. What should this audience keep in mind as they are hearing from some of the executives from Microsoft, Google, DeepMind, et cetera, who are going to be here?
Well, like I said, it doesn't matter if you're a startup or if you're DeepMind, Demis, if you're Microsoft. It's not just my job to make sure this stuff is secure. If you build your stuff with security first in mind, your customers will feel more comfortable deploying your products. Your customer will feel much more comfortable embracing your product, and it's going to get this stuff to move faster. Yes, you still need to hire me. You still need another pair of eyes to look at what those guys did to make sure that, it's fully secure. But if all these people don't build in security right on day one, it's much harder to go superimpose it or sort of go in and build it from the side. So my only question is, if you think about vibe coding, right? My team is still not using any of the vibe coding agents out there because we don't know what models are behind them. We don't know if the third model they're using for fine tuning isn't a North Korean model connected to the internet, and they won't tell us, right? I can't put my source code out in the public domain in a model because my source code is securing 82,000 companies. If a model figures out a flaw in my source code and I don't know the model is just giving me the answers, I just expose 82,000 customers, so I can't trust it. Right? If they would let me know, I'd use them. So I'm sure there are more security conscious people in the world who are not going to use many of these AI products until they can see the entire supply chain of AI.
Yeah, awesome. Nikesh, before we're going to get like rushed off the stage, thank you so much for joining us. That's the rest of our time.
Thank you. I just want to say one thing before I leave.
Sure.
This is the most spectacular times of our lives. Never has there been such an amazing inflection point in technology. You look around, everybody's excited, everybody wants to do something fun with AI, everybody wants to go build a new company, so go out there and have a great time. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Nikesh. Thank you.
Please please welcome Axios tech policy reporter, Ashley Gold.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm very glad to be here in San Francisco from Washington, where I report, and we write the AI Plus Government newsletter every Friday. If you're not subscribed yet, if you're already an AI Plus subscriber, you should start reading it. We're here to talk to someone who's so important in the state that leads the world in innovation, where policymakers are grappling with how to keep pace with technology. Joining us next is California State Senator Scott Wiener, who has been at the forefront of policy around tech, AI, and innovation. Senator, welcome.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's been a busy season for you, but you did manage to get something done on tech and AI this year. You managed to pass the Transparency and Frontier Artificial Intelligence Act. It's really, really hard to get a Frontier AI bill actually passed. The US Congress has not been able to do it. So tell us your secret. How did you get it over the finish line?
Sure, well, thank you for having me. And just to be clear, Congress has not passed a data privacy law, social media law, deepfakes law, net neutrality law.
That I know.
And so for all of those things, we've taken care of that here in California. And so sometimes when people say, hey, handle it at the federal level, I think, yeah, that'd be great, but it hasn't happened. So, in California, we're very fortunate that we're the beating heart of a lot of tech innovation, including AI, and AI particularly here in San Francisco. And so in the absence of federal action, I think there's an awareness that California has a huge role to play as the heart of innovation, as the fourth or fifth largest economy in the world, depending on the day. We can really set the standard in so many ways. And so there is a growing awareness of that in the legislature, and so we've been able to pass a number of laws, various aspects of AI challenges. And on this bill, it was a 2-year journey, and last year our first effort with Senate Bill 1047 was fairly explosive. When I introduced that bill, and we had really tried to socialize it with a lot of people before we introduced it, so no one would be surprised. And it was very quiet at first, and then it just exploded. I thought it would be a sort of standard tech regulation bill where there's conversations and you figure it out. And what I realized is that it triggered an important conversation around what do we mean when we say we want to encourage both innovation and public safety, that they're both really important. And threading that needle is really hard. And so after the governor vetoed last year's bill, we just kept working, and I'm really appreciative that the governor and his working group did some really good work, and we were able to absorb that work into our bill and get it done. So it was a good result.
And let me just say, compared to Washington, people can work on bills for 10 years. And it doesn't happen. So in 2, not such a bad effort. But.
Well, I've had other unrelated subjects bills where I've had to do 3 efforts over an 8-year period to get it done. So it can always take a long time.
And we know that the first bill did not make it across the finish line, but SB 53 did. So throughout this process, you were working with a lot of tech companies who had all different sorts of opinions about what the bill should and shouldn't look like. What was the most surprising thing to you about sort of facing the all-powerful tech lobby and the role they actually could play in shaping legislation?
Well, I mean, what we learned, and I've seen this with other industries too, is that industries are not always fully aligned.
Exactly.
And so we had different folks in industry who had very different perspectives, including, for example, Anthropic, who mostly endorsed the bill last year and fully endorsed the bill this year, but other tech companies and investors who were at least open-minded in engaging. And there were some ideas that they had that we were like hard no, that's not going to happen.
Can you tell us any of them?
I'll keep that to myself.
All right.
But there were other ideas that they had that were very actually good ideas. Because for me, when I pass any law that's going to regulate industry, whether it's the healthcare industry or housing or technology, I want to get it right, and I want it to be as easy to implement as possible. I'm not one of these people who are like, I just want to make your life hard. I want to accomplish the goal in a way that is as streamlined and easy for industry as possible without having make work. And so I appreciate it when folks will come forward and say, hey, we may or may not like what you're doing, but the way you have it drafted is going to make it 3 times as hard as it needs to be. And we'll take a look at it, and if they're right, we're happy to make that change to make it work better.
So that's one example of sort of feedback from a tech lobby or a group that can work, that is constructive and helps you make the bill better. But in what instance do you have to sort of say to your fellow lawmakers, okay, they've made their point clear, but we're still going to do what we're going to do, and we kind of just have to say, thank you for coming in, but we're not doing it?
Yeah, I think, when you have the folks who say, hey, don't do this because we should do it at the federal level, but then we say, but you just killed this at the federal level, and by the way, you're openly supporting a federal preemption of AI regulation that without any federal alternative. And so that happened during when I authored California's net neutrality law. The telecom and cable companies were like, no, let's do this at the federal level, when months before they had persuaded Trump's FCC to eliminate federal net neutrality protections. So my colleagues are savvy, and they definitely get that. And I think they're pretty good at discerning what are the real objections and what are the fake objections. Sometimes you have, and we saw this in this fight, the sort of suggestions, well, maybe we'll leave California if this passes. And I think most of my colleagues understand that that's probably not a thing, that even when we went through the years of this, like all these companies are leaving California, even Elon, who made such a big show of leaving California, but then he expanded in California. Yeah. And so I think my colleagues understand that.
You're like, all right, that's an empty threat.
Yeah.
So for people out there, whether in this audience or just your everyday constituents, what will be the biggest tangible effect for people using AI once SB 53 goes into effect?
It's, well, I think the most tangible way is the part that was the least controversial part of this, which I think is exciting, is it creates something called CalCompute, which is a public cloud that will try to democratize access to compute. And that, I think it's very exciting. And we, in the bill, we're not, because of the California Constitution, we can't dictate what the UC does, but the bill has an invitation to UC to host it. And multiple UC campuses have already come to me saying, we want to host it. So and that'll be a public-private partnership, and I'm really excited about that. And that will help, not the general public, but for a lot of founders and just people who don't have a lot of resources. It'll hopefully increase access to compute. I think when it comes to AI, when you talk to the public is excited about aspects of it, like the idea this could cure diseases, create powerful new antibiotics, help us solve climate change, make life smoother for people in a lot of ways. And a lot of people get that, and they like that, and they're excited about the innovation that's happening, and they don't want to stop that innovation. But people are also concerned about what are some possible impacts. And in SB 53, we're focused on catastrophic risk. But when people, they don't want their daughter to show up in a deepfake revenge porn that gets spread around their school. They don't want to have their bank be the subject of a cyber attack that is made easier because of a powerful model. They don't want to have even more efficient misinformation on the internet than we already have. And so they want us to not stop the innovation. They want the innovation to happen, but they want us to figure it out. And so for this, hopefully people will feel like, okay, government is actually stepping up in a light touch way to say, let's at least have these labs be transparent about what their safety practices are, because they've all said that they're engaging in safety practices. And so this will at least shine a light on it and create an incentive for maybe current or future labs that don't care about safety. I think the labs today largely do care about safety. A lot of the people in these companies care deeply about safety, but we don't know what's going to happen in a year, 2 years, 5 years. And so giving the public that peace of mind that we're at least going to have continual transparency around safety practices.
Is there anything that got dropped from SB 1047 to SB 53 that you really regret or you wish was still in the bill?
I mean, there are different bills. The two pieces that are the same is CalCompute that I just mentioned, and then the whistleblower protections. And the whistleblower protections are actually quite important because we have existing whistleblower law here and around the country, but to be protected as a whistleblower in a company, you have to be reporting a violation of the law. And here, when we're talking about safety practices, it's not violating the law, it's just creating a big safety risk. And so this is a new approach to whistleblowers, and that was very similar to what we had in SB 1047. But the heart of the bill shifted. In SB 1047, it was more of a liability approach that requiring companies to perform safety testing on large models before they deploy them. And if they don't do that testing and then something bad happens, the Attorney General could hold them accountable. SB 53 is not about liability, it's about transparency and safety practices. Obviously, I pursued SB 1047 all the way to the governor's desk, so I thought it was a reasonable approach. The governor disagreed, and so we took a different approach.
I want to pivot to Capitol Hill. You're running for Congress for Nancy Pelosi's old seat. And I'm wondering, this is something I think about all the time as a tech reporter. Is tech and AI something that resonates with voters? Is it a bread and butter issue that people care about on the campaign trail? And is talking about AI and AI safety going to be part of how you run your campaign?
In San Francisco or outside of San Francisco?
Both.
The beautiful thing about, well, there are a lot of beautiful things about San Francisco. Representing San Francisco, it's an amazing place to do politics because people really know what's going on and what you're doing, and people pay attention or engage. I'll walk down the street and someone will yell from across the street, "Make sure you vote for for AB 972."
They yell at you?
Yeah, they know the bill numbers. And so, and especially when it comes to technology, I mean, I'm doing big tech policy, representing people who are so much smarter than I am on tech, who are like uber global geniuses, Nobel laureates, and so on. And so it's very humbling in a way. But the good thing is, like, even when we were doing SB 1047, the industry was so opposed. On a regular basis, I would have like engineers come up to me on the street and say, "Okay, my employer doesn't like your bill, but I like it a lot, and thank you for doing it." And so people really know and they understand here. That's probably less so elsewhere. I think AI and tech policy is something that people care about. It is not the same intensity as the cost of housing and the cost of healthcare and secret police grabbing your neighbors and sending them to gulags in El Salvador. Those things probably resonate at a more intense level, but people still care, even though it might not always be the thing that they're voting on.
Do you think that it connects well to the affordability issue and people who are worried about job security and data centers being built in their backyards? How does it fit into that larger picture that Democrats are trying to focus on?
Yeah, I think that, in terms of, there are ways that AI will make people's lives so much better. And there's a story to tell there, like, for example, curing diseases that were considered incurable, or coming up with new medical technologies that will make delivery of healthcare less invasive, more cost-effective, and so forth. And so there are all these ways where AI can make people's lives better, more affordable, let you focus on the things that matter the most. There are other aspects that I think are real challenges, and the workforce issue is a big one that I have not heard anyone express a really good approach to it. Technology has always resulted and changes to work, and elimination of certain kinds of jobs, creation of other jobs, but it's been on a much longer timetable. So I'm making this up to an extent, but I think it's probably mostly true. When the printing press was invented, I'm going to say it probably took, I don't know, 100 years for it to like deeply impact work. It was probably very slow moving. When the cotton gin, or when some of these technologies come into effect, it takes a long, long time. Even the personal computer probably took a decade or two to really start impacting, the number of, administrative assistants or whatever who would have jobs. And even the smartphone, it probably took a good decade to really start changing work. This is potentially dramatically changing work and eliminating big categories of jobs in a matter of months or years. When you look at 7 million people, I think it's 7 million people who drive for a living in this country. When you look at the white collar impacts, which we've never really had before, that it's a lot of jobs. It's a lot of good paying jobs, of middle class jobs, in addition to lower income working class jobs. And I don't think society or government has really grappled with what that transition looks like, because just telling people, oh, don't worry, we'll retrain you, like to a 53-year-old accountant whose job is just evaporated, that's a tough thing to convince them is real. And so it's really, and universal basic income, which I know some people advocate, and I'm someone who thinks universal basic income can be a really good thing, but that is not the global solution, right? To say to people, you're not going to have to work anymore. No, we're just going to pay you. First of all, I'm skeptical that we're ever going to be able to pay at the level that would be needed. There's also that old saying, idle hands is devil's workshop. Human beings were not, in my view, designed to just not do anything. And while some people jobs are phased out, even if they have some level of income, will go on to do creative, great things, it can lead to other societal problems. So it's a huge issue. It's one that we have not grappled with, and it's happening really fast.
Yeah, I mean, we're running out of time, but what I keep noticing is many people are getting laid off at companies all across the economy, and a lot of leadership is attributing it to AI, but we still don't quite know how much AI is changing those jobs, yet people are getting laid off in the meantime while we're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and it's always hard to know why they're doing it. I think a lot of these layoffs are not necessarily, at least as AI related as they're saying. And I think you also have, corporations upscale and downsize for a million different reasons. And so, I don't think it's the case for all of these tech layoffs in particular, but some, we know that, coding is, AI is getting better and better at coding.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of jobs. And not just a lot of jobs, but if you look at the amount of effort and resources that have been put into teaching children how to code and young people how to code, because that's the future and you can have a great job, and then all of a sudden coding is not what it was.
Mm-hmm. And one fun thing before we go, what's your top use of AI personally?
My top use of AI, I do, it's just basic. It's great to just be able to get just a basic summary answer to a question, and then you can go to find the links and verify it later. So I'm super basic, but
that's okay.
I love getting that high level summary. It's at least a starting point, but it's so important for it not to be the end point, because sometimes it tells you the darndest things.
And that's what a policymaker is gonna tell you about AI.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Up next, our view from the top moderator, Axios publisher, Nicholas Johnston.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nicholas Johnson, the publisher of Axios. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon on actually a very beautiful afternoon here in San Francisco. This is our third year hosting an AI summit in San Francisco. We're so grateful for all of you for joining us here. We're also hugely grateful to all of our partners at Axios. Everything we do at Axios would be impossible without the support of our partners. The investments we make in journalism around the country, including here in Axios, San Francisco, right here in the Bay Area. Also holding these kinds of great conversations. We're hugely grateful for our partners. So a huge thanks to Atlassian for making today's conversations possible. And so I'm very excited to welcome to the stage from Atlassian their Chief Marketing Officer, Zeynep Özdemir. Zeynep, welcome to the Axios stage. Hello. I hear you got a little bit of a fan club out there. Let's jump in, though, for those who weren't cheering at the start, with a little bit of an introduction. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how it relates to Atlassian's mission, and then some of the things you're working on, like the cool partnership with Williams Racing.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. Zeynep Özdemir again, Chief Marketing Officer at Atlassian. So at Atlassian, we build teamwork and collaboration software. I'm sure some of you in the audience know us through our products like Jira, Confluence, Loom, and Rovo. So we are powering up teams for many years now, and we're very excited to be at this point in time where the definition of teams are changing, and we're welcoming AI teammates to human teams, and that is the next exciting frontier for us, essentially enabling human-AI collaboration at scale. You mentioned our partnership with Atlassian Williams Racing.
Yeah.
Atlassian Williams Racing is a Formula One team, and it's one of the organizations we happen to be sort of transforming, running a teamwork transformation with AI. But it happens to be one of the exciting stories that everybody likes to hear about. Just for context, we've become title and technology sponsor of the team exactly a year ago. But it was never, the partnership was never about sticking our logo on a race car. It was really about getting Williams Racing at the front of the grid. And that's really exciting to us because essentially this was a team hungry for change and transformation. So that's why we're in the trenches with them transforming.
I'm going to come back around to Williams, but first I want to start at that team thing. Tell us a little bit how building for teams informs the work you do on AI.
Yes. So first of all, it's foundationally, we're AI optimists. As I said, we think we will all welcome AI as teammates to our teams. So, and I think AI will speed us all up and actually just also level the playing field in terms of the quality of work we put out there. There are probably two beliefs that shape the way we build AI products. The first one is this ability to tap into your organization's memory holistically. And what I mean by memory is all of the business context you've been building around teams, goals, experiments, milestones in your companies. And bringing that to every single individual. I think that is so important. I really feel like being able to search and chat and have conversations with that memory is going to be table stakes pretty soon. And I think it's going to be like oxygen in the modern enterprise.
What does that look like for today? Like so many AI conversations are like, well, what might be one day? Like how is it impacting workflows now? How are you really seeing it change organizations?
You know, the most successful ones we're seeing are the most pragmatic and practical ones. I'll give you an example from my personal sort of anecdote. When I joined Atlassian as a leader, I had a lot of questions, and I was actually chatting with Rovo, our sort of AI product and AI search and chat capability, and I was asking questions nonstop around products, why certain decisions were made, and how teams operated in this new company that I've just come into. And normally, under normal circumstances, I'd be stalking my new colleagues to answer all of those questions. But Rovo didn't judge me, so I could just like ask any question question. There was no question silly or repetitive. So that was my experience. And now we've rolled out an onboarding agent to the entire company that lets you have that free flow conversation with that entire memory of your organization and also take some actions that you need to take. So that's a really good example. But I can give you an Atlassian Williams example.
Yeah. Well, let's stick with that. Like, let's stick with the Williams relationship. Like, do you have any examples from like how they're able to deploy that for a racing team?
Yes, they have been really eager to deploy agents to solve very clear, pragmatic problems. One such agent that I can share, many of them I am unable to share actually because it's a competitive advantage for them.
In the room.
Yeah, just if you promise to all keep it. They have this, for example, agent called a compliance agent where, I mean, if you're familiar with Formula One, every change they introduce to the car has to be vetted and has to be compliant to FIA and Formula One regulations. Normally, a person would need to understand the change and like actually go to the most up-to-date regulations and, you know, assess whether that's doable or not. But they have an agent doing that for them right now.
Keeping track of all that so they stay within
actually, when you decide to make a change, the engineers describe it to a robo agent, and the robo agent tells them, nope, not compliant. In order for that to be compliant, you need to actually change this and that. So they have that conversation, which is very powerful. Similarly, we've completely revamped their experimentation sort of process. Formula One is all about rapid experimentation. So they run like thousands of simulations at any given time. But they all run them in very different silos. And so almost like every experiment for them until now was starting from scratch without any memory of what's been done in the past. Right. So now, all of that has been onboarded into Jira Confluence and indexed automatically by Rovo, which is their AI agent. So they can now sit down before they start an experiment. They can say, what's been done before? Like, is this right? So they have a whole conversation or based on the past experiences.
Spin this forward as you look ahead. Like, how do these relationships evolve? How do these technologies evolve? Like, what's next for, like, just both for Williams or any kind of enterprise that you exist?
So I mean, you probably picked up, like, we think the lowest hanging fruit in how AI can unlock, like, unprecedented pace of learning is kind of bringing your data together and making it available, searchable, discoverable, indexable, and having conversations with it. So that's very important. But over time, we are probably going to see AI become more proactive. What I mean by that is that it's not just sort of like being embedded in your workflows or answering your questions, but kind of hovering around and essentially nudging you with improvements, you know, and giving
not being a silent partner.
Not being a silent partner, being present and helping you out. Another area where obviously as we build more trust with AI, we're going to see them, AI agents or teammates, take more action. And that's why I think it's a journey. And we have to be on that journey. We have to have systems of record that understand what AI owns and what humans own, so that over time, we sort of transfer that ownership as we build trust.
Right. Before we run out of time, I want to ask one practical question here. Like, this will work for me as I try to figure out how to use AI in our newsroom. Probably lots of people are trying to figure out AI. Like, what's the secret to get it to scale? Like, so many AI deployments maybe don't stick. Do you have any tips on how to get it to actually work and grow in an organization?
Yes, I will. I will say something that may sound obvious, but it's actually not happening. Actually get AI to solve problems you care about, not problems that are like kind of, you don't care about,
it sounds
just
easy,
on the side.
Right.
The second is be ready to blow up your current workflow and start from scratch and think from scratch. And I think that's the best way to approach it.
Okay, good tips for everyone to take back. Before we run out, the last question, we love to end our newsletters on one fun thing at Axios. I love to end this on one fun thing. Let's make it one fun AI thing. Tell us a cool AI use case you found in your personal life.
I will share this. It's going to unlock all of you. I've done a remodeling at my house recently, and turns out AI is a great companion to negotiate with your contractor. So as soon as they come with the bill, you can go back to them and be like, nope, this is not right. There's a better version of this, and here's how I would do it. And usually, it worked for me several rounds.
I love that. When I bought my new air conditioner, I used the same thing with my contractor. It made me sound very smart. Ina, thanks you so much for being here. Thanks for Atlassian for making today possible. Ina is going to come back up on stage to continue the conversations.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Hi, I'm Ashley Gold, Senior Tech Policy Reporter at Axios.
And I'm Maria Curie, Tech Policy Reporter here at Axios. Together, we write the AI Plus Government Newsletter, which is the Friday takeover of AI Plus.
Our reporting brings you exclusive insights and scoops from inside the White House, federal agencies, and Capitol Hill.
We're going to help you understand the developing debates around AI trust, safety, and governance as they unfold right here in Washington, D.C.
Don't miss out. Subscribe to AI Plus by scanning the QR code.
Thank you for joining us, and enjoy the rest of the AI Plus Summit. Please give a warm welcome back to the stage, Ina Fried.
So one of the things we love to do at our events is bring on folks that are using the technology in interesting ways to show what's possible, where some of the technology can go. And we think about AI, we think about leaping forward in the future, but also AI can be used to help preserve the past and help bridge generations. So please help me welcome Michael Runningwolf and Mason Grimshaw of Indigenous, who are using AI to preserve and revitalize indigenous languages, as well as help give much needed tech and coding skills to indigenous youth. Michael and Mason, please come on out. Hey, Michael. Hey, Mason. So definitely welcome. I definitely want to hear about the projects you're doing with AI, but talk about your work. How did you end up starting Indigenous, and what are some of the ways that you got started at this?
Well, it started with research. So I was an Amazon Alexa employee, a machine learning engineer working on the science behind Alexa, and I thought, why couldn't we do this for ourselves? And I began this initiative with some indigenous peers of mine of how do we begin building voice AI for indigenous peoples? And I realized very quickly that there's not that many of us. But I knew Mason Grimshaw, and I'm hard to get, I don't read email. He was very insistent and forced himself upon me, in a good way. and then we had this idea of why don't we collaborate, because we both have the same problem, we need more indigenous talent. And he had this idea.
And set the stage, because I think you were telling me, and this is shocking, that there's, on average, one PhD student a year coming out of your community in computer science.
Yeah, the CRA Toll-Based survey, which surveys schools in North America, internationally, we only graduate, of all of 2,000 PhD students per year, 1 or 2 are Native American. Often there's none, and very few of us out there in the space.
Yeah, and I mean, you see it in the lived experience of day-to-day life on a reservation. You just aren't coming into contact at all with computer science or less, I guess, AI. It's in your phones and your apps and everywhere, but you're not going to be experienced to the idea that you could be a computer scientist.
And so part of the work is teaching skills to indigenous youth, and you've been really active in that with the Lakota tribe, right?
Yeah, so I'm Lakota. I'm Chichangu Lakota. Hamataki Epi, hello my relatives. It's really important, I think, to do this within my own community, because this AI is it is everywhere, and it's going to be everywhere increasingly so, and we need those conversations to be happening in our own communities, because otherwise we're just sort of at risk of being swept up in the wave of whichever way that takes us.
And I think we have a photo of some of the work, if we can pull that up. So again, part of it is showing people what's possible,
right.
But part of it is also giving them skills so that they can be part of it.
Correct. Yeah, so at the Code Camp, we create this environment very intentionally that allows them to be themselves as Lakota youth, but also engage in becoming computer scientists and taking this technology on for themselves. They build applications that both enhance and instill their own culture within themselves. And at the same time, they're learning those skills and they're being exposed to those skills that would allow them to have careers in industry. And certainly, most of our students will not get that exposure just in the course of their high school learning.
And then some of the work you're doing is also to use the AI to preserve culture, but also to share it. I think we have a video that we're going to run, or a photo first, but one of the interesting projects you chose was identify plants and then use that as a way to sort of understand not just which plant is it, and yeah, it's in English and Lakota, but it's also what has this plant been used for? Michael, why did you choose that application, and what were you hoping to get out of it?
Well, honestly, it's easy. The image recognition models are really easy to work with, and there's a lot of them. But it also allows us to, in a concrete way, get Lakota kids into their own land. This is in the rural hills of South Dakota, the Black Hills, traditional homelands of the Lakota. And we got them in the hills, collecting samples, being able to identify the plants, and teaching them what they mean. And one of the kids' reaction, and I won't repeat it word for word because it's a rude word, he said, "Holy, there's medicine all around us." Because you begin to realize that there's these food plants that they were coexisting with, and they just ate it up. And the technology created a new venue in which these young people, young men and women, were able to interact with their own culture through using the technology of artificial intelligence.
And how do you think through the role of technology? I think there's some stereotypes that get at play that technology and indigenous culture are in opposition, and that's really not the case. But you also do bring a sensibility around what is the impact of all this. How do you think through some of those issues, whether it's the environmental impacts or the other impacts of technology, which can be cultural appropriation, data extraction?
Yeah. So we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but I work with communities who range from the Northwest Territories, very near the North Pole, all the way down into the Brazilian jungle. And we're working with communities who are entrenched in their cultural centers, which is often rural and disconnected, and they rely upon satellite internet. But they're utilizing internet to advance themselves. They're taking on online courses. One community elder, who's in his nearly 70 years old, taught himself how to build VR applications and is engaging with indigenous to build artificial intelligence so you can put on the headset and speak into it. And so we're talking to futurists who are literally on the edge of civilization, beyond, well beyond the benefits and fortunes of San Francisco, trying to engage in the technology. We're not trying to stay stuck in history. We're trying to engage our culture in a way that coexists with the future.
And sometimes I think we get divided into a lot of false binaries in our society, but one of them is that it's sort of all or nothing. And when it comes to data centers, my sense is some data centers, on native land that are helping improve the economy or helping improve life could be a good thing, but just plopping, gigawatts of energy is probably not a good thing. How do you think about some of those trade-offs?
Yeah, so there's a big push right now by the administration, the federal administration, to build more data centers. And a lot of the consequential infrastructure for the backbone of the internet does go through indigenous lands. It follows I-90 and all that, for example, but interstate I-90. And there's this push to put these big, huge data centers, but there is an ecological cost to a hyperscale warehouse, especially if you're doing it in an ecologically fragile environment. But there are also indigenous communities like the Potawatomi who have a company called Data Holdings in Milwaukee, who is entirely based upon green energy, and it's nuclear bomb proof too. And it's this data center, they have contracts with the federal government, it's high security environment, and it doesn't use water. They use alternative energy, like I mentioned. And there is a way to build AI data centers responsibly. And of course, it's coming from the indigenous, because we need to make that trade-off between economic development for ourselves, but also in a way that doesn't impact our environment to the extent that it doesn't need to.
And there's a similar issue with data. I mean, on the one hand, today we're using these large language models that are very not representative. English, and specifically American English, is super overrepresented. A lot of cultures and languages are less represented. But there's obviously a societal good in having those data sets be more representative. But just like artists as a community don't necessarily want their data taken to be used to extract and put them out of work. I know a lot of cultures. We wrote in AI Plus a few weeks ago about this initiative that I know you're familiar with that Mozilla is doing, where different communities can say, we are interested in this data being used, but they can actually specify. So a community could say, it can be used but only for research, or it can be used but only if we're paid, or it can be used but only if it's benefiting this geographic region. How important is it that the data that's being collected, that the people whose data it belongs to have a say in how it's used, and how do you approach that?
I think it starts with the basic premise that consent is a thing. And in order to give consent, you also need to have agency. And given true agency, you can't be retroactively asking an indigenous community's permission, or any at-risk minority group of like, can we have your data? And be able to accept the fact that we don't want you to use our data. Or if we do give you access to the data, we want it to be the research to be conducted in a way that is beneficial to indigenous communities. And so what I would say to that is that we're not against open data sets like on Hugging Face and et cetera like that, and the copyleft protections. We're interested in just having consent at all. Like a lot of indigenous communities do not want their data at all out there in the internet, and a lot of communities do. And we can't be seen as a monolithic. Just because one tribe wants their data on the world doesn't mean the other one doesn't want it. And we all need to have a bespoke, catered solution to each one, which is really just asking a community, do you want to participate in this at all?
And help set the stage for the audience. What are some of the things you think might be possible with AI? As you're looking forward, what are some of the projects that you have in mind? And then we'll get to how the folks in this room and watching can help out. But first, what are some of the uses of AI you can imagine that would be beneficial?
So, well, on the education side, so for the Code Camp, we see it really accelerate some of the things that our students can do. We provide we have our own smaller GPU box that we host some llama models on, and they can talk to them when they're building their projects. And some of them use them, some of them don't. I think it sort of mirrors society, and that some people are really excited about them, some people are kind of hesitant. And what we saw there was some of our students, and we love to work with all of them, but there's some students who want to go even further and further and further, and just setting them loose with the llama model was really fun. We were supposed to be doing art, just put some squares on the page, put some triangles on the page. This one kid, I kept going and saying, how are you? Can I help you with anything? He kept shooing me away. And I was like, what is going on over there? I came back, 20 minutes later, and he had built like Pong out of this drawing package that we used. And I was like, I didn't even know you could do that. But the idea that you could accelerate a student he's going to go home and live in a very rural place without a lot of connection to people with experience or expertise in computer science and things like that. The ability for him to take that and just have an awesome idea and just go for it, I think that's super compelling, but there's other stuff too.
Yeah, and then real briefly, I referred to it earlier. So I'm part of co-founder of a research project called First Languages AI Reality, which is a program of indigenous, where what we're trying to do is build language reclamation tooling for endangered languages in North America. 90% of our languages in the United States are endangered, and far more, 70% of them are critically endangered, where we're probably less than a generation away from them expiring and going to sleep. And so we're building artificial intelligence on the edge with little cedar boxes, where we put the language in the box, create agentic tooling where you can engage in a naturalistic way and get education for how to speak your own language, and make them cheap and easily accessible. But that's the next step. And next spring, we should be very excited to have our very first product out in the future in the space. But right now, we're doing the fundamental science because language models aren't compatible with indigenous languages in North America.
So I think we're out of time, but I do want to give you a chance. How can folks in this room and watching online, where should they go and how can they help out?
You can find us at indigigenius.com. This is us at Code Camp, which is super exciting. The first year we only took up like 2 of those stairs, 2 of those steps. I think we're going to need a new set of stairs next year, which is super exciting. We, of course, need funding partners, but we also really like to help our students sort of understand the network of indigenous people who are doing technology. So if you are one of those people here in the room or watching, we'd love to connect with you. If you know people on your team that would be good for us to talk to, we'd love to talk to them too.
Thank you so much, Mason Grimshaw, Michael Runningwolf, and Indigigenius.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So next up, we have some repeat guests of mine who are no strangers to the folks in this room and watching online. They've been building some of the most iconic tech companies that we all know and love, and they are also teaming up in their own startup, Sierra. So please help me welcome Clay Bavor and Brett Taylor.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Hey, Brett.
Hey. Great to be here.
Well, Brett, you can see you smiling because Stanford beat Cal this year, so.
It's been a minute, but we have the axe.
So I have a ton that I want to talk to you both about, both what you all are up to, but then also you both have such an interesting lens on this moment. And I think it is really important to talk about where we are in this moment. So we'll get there in a sec, but I want to remind people what you are up to now, and you guys are doing some new things. So at Sierra, you're building agents that companies can use to interact with customers. You guys, we reported you were like close to giant funding, and then you hit 100 million in revenue. What's happened in the year since we saw you last?
It's been a whirlwind of a year. As you said, just a couple weeks ago, we crossed 100 million in annual recurring revenue. And for us as an enterprise software business, this is contracted, durable, in many cases, multi-year commitments. And just incredibly proud of the impact that we're having with and for our customers. To give you a sense for what it is we do, if you have an ADT alarm system and it goes on the fritz and you're wondering what's going on, you call ADT and AI will pick up and help you figure out which of the 52 panels you have. If it's a battery issue, drop ship you a new battery in the mail. The progress we've made in industries, large, small, regulated, unregulated, has just been extraordinary over the last year. We just had our customer summit where we had hundreds of our customers in town in San Francisco for the first time. And what's kind of incredible about our customer base is 50% of our customers do over $1 billion in revenue per year, 20% do over $10 billion a year. And so in particular, we're showing up well for some of the biggest, most sophisticated brands in the world.
And I hear you're also expanding internationally?
Yeah, we just earlier this year, we opened up in London. On February 1st, we had 1 person there. We now have many dozens and have a growing business with companies like Marshmallow and Deliveroo and others.
And Next.
Next, the largest clothing retailer in the UK. And actually, as of today, we are opening up shop in Japan. And very excited, SoftBank's Vision Fund 2 actually invested in Sierra, and we'll be partnering with them as we open up shop in Japan. So more countries, more regions. Again, there's a lot of interest in what we built.
And then in terms of what it is you offer, one of the ways you're expanding, which I actually thought a lot of these agents already did, and I understand I'm incorrect, is giving them more context. So you want them, obviously, if you're going to use an AI agent for customer service, you want it to know more than, that's the whole point, is it can know your history. I would have thought that was already there, but I understand you've built a new agent system that has more context than customer service agents typically have.
Yeah, I'll sort of talk about the problem because it's actually harder, I think, than just memory. You know, we all use ChatGPT, and for most of us, we keep the memory on, so it remembers previous interactions. If you think about the difference between customer service and customer experience, though, it's those little things. It's remembering your last interaction. It might remember the last thing you purchased if it's a retailer. But more than anything, it's going from being reactive to proactive as well. If you think about the mobile operators here in the United States, they all have about 1% attrition every year. Each basis point of attrition is just worth so much. And so service is kind of a cost-reducing tool, but experience is actually about the top line of these businesses, particularly businesses that focus on their lifetime value. So we built a product called our Agent Data Platform, which does what you described. It enables agents to have memory. It enables you to, when you call twice in a row, it remembers the past conversation. But it's more than that. It can actually incorporate all the data about you. So with SiriusXM, who's been a design partner with this Agent Data Platform, when it's giving you an offer on your new plan, it remembers everything about you and it's personalized. And we think this is a really compelling opportunity for brands to go from conversations to relationships. We think your agent should be sort of a concierge. They actually helps you not just reduce costs and reduce calls into your call center, but actually drives revenue. And we think this is the opportunity in AI agents for customer experience, and that's why we're so excited for some of the new products we've announced.
So I want to step back a little bit and get both of your senses on where we are in this moment of time. A lot of talk, we're in a bubble, there's way too many zeros at the end of all these things. And I'm curious, as someone you guys are both growing a real business, you mentioned 100 million annual revenue run rate. I imagine you definitely think this AI thing is real and big. But are the folks who are looking at these giant investments, I don't think it's necessarily, AI is not a thing, but is there a case to be made that this pace is more than a human society can do? I mean, we saw this with the internet. Most of the ideas in .com 1.0, even the ones we laughed at, are all real businesses today.
Webvan is now Instacart.
Even Cosmo is DoorDash. But it took a longer period of time. Might the same not be said about AI, that, it's a real thing, but we're going to need a boom and a bust before we get there?
We talk about this a lot. Why don't you start?
Yeah, I think it probably is a bubble, first. But it's interesting thing about bubbles is a bubble, I think broadly, you have more investment in some businesses that don't deserve it. But what's interesting about bubbles is you often, like if you look at the internet era, we built out fiber. It turned out to actually really fuel Web 2.0 and the eras that came after that. You ended up with most of the large companies in the stock market today, like Amazon and Google, founded during that period. And you also had Pets.com and Webvan and the others. I think the same is probably true right now, where there will be a modest number of exceptional companies founded that will represent a huge amount of growth, just in terms of, and in large part because these agents are actually capable of doing things that just weren't actual markets before. One of my favorite examples is Harvey, a legal tech startup, and I couldn't really think of many legal tech companies that you'd have on a stage at a conference like this before. But all of a sudden, when the AI agent's actually doing like an antitrust review, wow, that's valuable. And so software is going from being a modest productivity driver for people to doing valuable economic work, which means the addressable market of software has just vastly expanded. So I think what's going on in the markets right now is everyone, I think, correctly believes that even the current generation of technology, not even assuming future improvements, will dramatically change society and drive productivity into the economy and drive incredible economic value. And because the impact is so great, there's a shortage of GPUs, there's a shortage of infrastructure, and it creates all the bottlenecks in the supply chain drive prices up, whether it's for RAM or GPUs or even power, which creates a lot of things that sort of look and smell like a bubble. But I think it would be a mistake to dismiss it as snake oil, because it's not actually. There's a ton of value. Just like I always joke, if you invested in Amazon.com, your perspective on the .com bubble is very different than you were all in on Buy.com. And I think that's true now too. And so I think we're going to see and look back and actually, like you talked about, wow, most of the ideas were true. That was a failure, that was a failure. They were overextended. But there's going to be a handful of companies that are truly generational. And I think the hard part for entrepreneurs is like you want to be the generational one, and there's so much demand for this technology. You really need to, the pace is just something like none of us have ever experienced. So we are trying to responsibly grow a business, and I think we're doing it, I think quite responsibly, but it is insane right now. I mean, there's like the level of excitement and investment, I think is at once warranted, and also I think it is a reasonable thing to ask. I think it would be irresponsible not to ask.
My bubble indicator is the number of times you read agentic on billboards driving down 101. And it's pretty high right now. But I think it captures this kind of dichotomy, if you will, where there is unequivocal, massive potential in this technology. Software that you can, for the first time, hire not to make you 11% more productive, but actually to do a job and do a job well. That has never existed before. There's so much opportunity in that. And yet, boys, there's a lot of agentic on those billboards.
And so Brett, as some of you know, wears another hat. He's also chairman of OpenAI, and I'm going to ask him a couple questions about that. But I'll make this one to you, Clay, because I think Brett has a horse in this race. We've heard a lot about sort of the rise of alternatives to OpenAI, and you guys have always been model agnostic. You've built it so that different models. What is your perspective on, does OpenAI have this massive lead? Are there a bunch of credible candidates? How do you think about that? And then we'll let Brett give a rebuttal.
First of all, to your point, from the outset, we've built Sierra to be flexible across models, knowing that just the pace of change is so high that you need to be able to adapt and incorporate the latest and best technology. I think there's perhaps a inappropriate level of focus on benchmarks and what score on the International Math Olympiad did this or that model get. I think more practically, it's what's the performance of the model. There's price, latency, performance trade-offs. Different models have different characteristics there. And then also the support that you get from these organizations in optimizing your system for them. And so each of them, whether it's the GPT family of model, Gemini family of model, Claude family, they each have their strengths. And one of the fun things for us is building the tools to be able to figure out, like we could use this one in this way for this thing. To answer your question directly, OpenAI is just an exceptional frontier lab and continue to do exceptional work. My alma mater, Google, where I was for 18 years, the latest Gemini models are extraordinary. And we're excited to have better and more powerful Lego bricks to build with seemingly each week and each month.
And that seems to be part of the sense, too, is it's not that one company or the other. It's just that every couple months you get things that weren't possible that suddenly become possible.
Or for dramatically less money. I mean, that's the other thing is, when GPT-4 was the best model in the world, it was great, but I think it cost at the time maybe $60 per million output tokens, which is like 2 orders of magnitude than the frontier models today. So as Clay said, it's not just performance. In fact, for many tasks, the frontier models from last year are actually sufficiently intelligent, but now they might have been cost prohibitive. And now you have this price, performance, latency, and latency is under talked about, because if you're doing voice conversations in particular, latency is particularly important. So I think a little bit of, at least for an applied AI company like Sierra, I think of models almost like databases. There's not one database that everyone uses, or even one type of database. If you want, transactional databases, you use one thing. If you want one for analytics, you use another. I think under the hood, we use what's called a constellation of models, and many of them, you don't need to drive a Ferrari to the grocery store. There's you can use much more modest parameter count, much more sort of purpose-built models for a lot of different tasks. And I think that is sort of the domain of applied AI, is really using these models as pieces of infrastructure.
So when you put on your other hat, when you're, I can't imagine how OpenAI board meetings even work. They sound fascinating. I've heard some interesting things. But one of the things... I should be
offended by that. I run a tight ship, okay?
Clearly.
He does.
In fairness, he came in after the drama that you may have read about online. But I'm curious, how do you look at something when you guys are talking about, we need, again, it does seem like there's a new zero every time I talk. How do you even begin to have a rational conversation around how many $1 trillion of infrastructure investment is needed? How do you think about the discussions of, it seems to me that the ambition is always growing, and sometimes that can be a good thing. We've talked a lot about Amazon, and I think one of Amazon's great strengths was they were always 2 steps ahead of the competitors. When people thought they were a bookstore, they were an everything store. When people thought they were an everything store, they were a web services company, and on and on. So, but I'm curious, how do you begin to make sense of it? How do you have a rational discussion around such a something that's hard for most of us to comprehend.
Well, let me start with one thing that Clay mentioned, which is important, which is OpenAI is a mission-driven frontier research lab. Our mission is to ensure that artificial general intelligence benefits humanity, and we are trying to create AGI. And so one of the things we think about, which is obviously the economics matter, and I will answer your question, though, is what are the prerequisites to AGI? And we really believe that having the world's biggest computer is an important input to do so. And both training and inference, especially with the new reasoning models, I think inference time, compute has become increasingly important. And then similarly, when you think about benefiting humanity, I think obviously there's things like safety, which are quite important. But the other side of that's more the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. But the other side of it is how do you distribute this technology to everyone in the world? And that also requires a lot of compute and efficient compute too, just because to enable a free tier of ChatGPT, which is very mission aligned, you need to do this efficiently. So one of the weird things of reframing your question is like, how much intelligence can the world consume? And I'm not sure I even know the answer to that question. But on the discussion about how much to invest, ChatGPT has grown faster than any consumer service in history. I think the revenue growth, both with ChatGPT, the API business, enterprise business, it's awe-inspiring. So we think a lot about how to responsibly deploy capital so that we have the world's biggest computer, that we can be the frontier lab that is creating this, truly once-in-a-generation technology, once-in-many-generations technology. And also, ensure that we have a business to sort of back it up. But as you said, because the numbers are growing at unprecedented rates, it's hard to know how to extrapolate from there. So I'm not saying we make all the decisions perfectly, but we think about this a lot. I mean, this is all we really think about. But I really believe in the economic value that will be driven by this technology, and I think a commercial model follows from that. If you just look at the rise of products like Codex and even ChatGPT's like consumer services, I've never seen anything like it. There's dangers to extrapolating from, too aggressively from this data. But I also, as I think Clay articulated well, these agents are providing unprecedented economic value, and I really believe in the business.
And obviously, you need capital in all sorts of new ways. The company's been very creative in finding new types of ways of partnerships, finding new ways. Sam has said one of those is probably going public at some point. I read that Anthropic's seeking to do it maybe as soon as next year. Do you think they'll be first, or you think you guys can beat them out of the gate?
So clever. You think
you want me to take this?
Yeah, exactly. Nothing to comment on that, obviously, but I appreciate you shooting your shot. Look, I think, one of the obvious things now that was not obvious 4 years ago was just the capital required to build AGI. I think, or probably maybe 6 years ago. And so, with the recapitalization we did, we're really trying to set the company up to be able to capitalize the business to achieve our mission. And part of that may involve going public at some point, but that's obviously not something we're talking about right now. But I'm really happy that the structure we have enables the company to capitalize in a way it needs to, and it structures a not-for-profit to really benefit the maximum number of people as that public benefit corporation grows. So I'm really happy we're set up to facilitate outcomes like that over time, but obviously no comment right now.
And I know we're almost out of time, but my colleague Dan Primack pointed out, there was this report that, Sam was also looking at a space company and is like, what is it with these tech titans in space?
Space is cool.
That's what space Lego sets are for. Much cheaper, scales infinitely.
How can you not? I mean, actually, it's so funny you say that. Like, for most of us into computers, it says the final frontier. It's also really interesting that everything from the data centers in space, it's really interesting. Space has become increasingly relevant to a lot of different industries, telecommunications, data centers. So I can't comment on that, but I do think it's very exciting to look at the innovation in space compared to a decade ago. I think it's incredibly positive for many industries, well beyond just putting satellites into orbit.
Space is cool?
Space is amazing. I think it's easy to lose sight of what's happening. We have reusable rockets that can land themselves, cars that can drive you around San Francisco, computers that can talk and make videos of anything. It's like, this is ridiculous. It's like we've compressed 100 years of great science fiction writing into like the last 5 or 8 years. It's extraordinary. It's like so cool to be alive right now. And yes, space is cool.
So I was going to ask what jobs created, but we're out of time. But I guess the new job was science fiction writer, because we've done all the things. Well, I love talking to you both. I hope this is going to be an annual tradition. Would love to see you back.
Please, if you'll have us back, please.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ina. Great to see you. Thanks.
So next we have a special guest who's very near and dear to my heart. I would like you all to meet Fluffball. This is Fluffball. Fluffball is an AI guinea pig. We're all AI guinea pigs, but that's actually Fluffball's full role. And I bring up Fluffball 1 because Fluffball is fluffy and adorable, but I also think it's an example of using AI for a particular reason to do anything. Now, they could have used AI to like put ChatGPT and I could ask Fluffball, how many people have been to space or what have you, but that's not what they did. All they did was make Fluffball cute and have its own personality. So you can buy these now. Casio, the Japanese company that makes calculators and watches, actually makes, it's called Mouflin. But it develops a personality based on your interactions with it. We've been very loving to Fluffball, so Fluffball is generally happy with us. It was designed initially as for kids who can't have pets, who are allergic to pets. But one of the really neat things that we've found, we've had Fluffball testing in our house for a couple weeks now, is my mother-in-law lives with us and has Alzheimer's. And Fluffball has made an incredible impact in our life. I think we have a photo. This is my mother-in-law, Pat. And every night, I pull Fluffball out of the little charging, it charges in this, and hand it to my mother-in-law, and she cuddles with it. And I just bring this out, one, again, because Fluffball is adorable, but also to remind, not everything needs to be ChatGPT. And I think over the next few years, we are going to see chatbots shoved into just about everything. And so I think it's a reminder that AI can be used in a lot of ways. So thank you very much, Fluffball, for coming out. Do you have anything you want to say? All right, Fluffball's feeling a little shy. I'm going to let Fluffball go take a little nap, but thank you. Thank you. Bye, Fluffball. All right, now my head's all in Fluffball land. But as these AI systems scale, as large companies do it, responsibility and safety are really important. And when we talk about responsibility and safety, sometimes we're talking about DC and regulation, or as Scott mentioned, California and regulation, since DC is not doing a whole lot. Sometimes we're thinking about outside groups that are pushing tech companies, but there's also responsibility and safety work that's going on at each of these companies, at OpenAI, at Google, at Microsoft. But it's a really complicated and interesting challenge to be working within those. So I'm very excited to bring out Sarah Bird, Chief Product Officer for Responsible AI at Microsoft. Sarah. Welcome. Thank you so much. So thank you, first of all, for being here. We didn't even get to meet backstage, but it's good to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here, although Fluffball is a hard act to follow.
It is, for you and me both. I'm curious, you've been doing this for a long time. So you were doing responsible AI before most of us were talking about AI. Microsoft very early on had this committee, Aether, that you were involved with, really looking at what was coming down. Talk about how those conversations started out, how your role started out, and how, we'll get into where they are now, but talk about sort of the evolution of what it means to be talking responsible AI within one of these big companies.
Yeah, I remember I was involved in starting the very first research group in responsible AI at Microsoft, which is called the FATE group, and this is still a vibrant research group today. And it really started and very positively surprised with generative AI, how much the world has woken up and said responsible AI is incredibly important and we don't want this technology without it. And we've seen, the regulations starting to follow with that. We see customers demanding it. And so I think we've seen many organizations actually invest significantly in it. And I don't think I would have expected that working in the field 5 or 6 years ago with the attitudes towards responsible AI. So I think there's been kind of an enormous growth and innovation, but there's still a lot to be done to use this technology in all the ways that people want to use it. Like, there's lots of challenges that we haven't figured out yet, and it's not something that like a big tech company can do alone. We need a whole ecosystem around that. Like, consumers need to be educated about the parts they need to play. We need to have regulation. And so I think it's going to take time for that whole ecosystem to come together. And so I think we're at the beginning of this journey, but the start is stronger than I expected it to be.
And you mentioned the regulation piece, and obviously that's just one piece. Yeah. But I'm curious, my sense is, you know, you could like or dislike the types of regulations that were being talked about a couple of years ago. You can like or not like the EU's AI Act, but there were efforts to start regulation. It really feels like that dialogue has receded into the background. I mean, if you look at the difference between the AI summits that were in Bletchley Park and Seoul, where it was really, you know, how can we safely deploy this technology? By contrast, Paris felt like, no offense to TechCrunch disrupt. It was like everyone was looking for OpenAI and others to build in their country. Is there a danger with, you know, this being shaped as us versus China? It's a race, we've got to win. There is merit to that, but it does feel like the responsibility piece is now not being pushed at the regulatory level, at least at the federal level, and there's a lot of pressure on Europe, which has been in the lead, to back off. Does that hinder the efforts overall for responsible deployment of AI?
So I think that there's a healthy tension that's happening here, because one of the challenges with how to implement AI responsibly for this technology is that the patterns are so new and we're still figuring them out. And so to figure out how to create regulation that achieves the outcomes we want, but keeps pace with the change of technology, and frankly allows us to still innovate even in the responsible AI side, I think is a big challenge. And so I think we see excitement about wanting to do this, and then some realization of how difficult it is to do it, and that kind of back and forth. And so I expect once we have some more patterns we feel good are working, we'll kind of see people search for it and want to really. And I think, to give an example of this, you know, a couple of years ago, if people were writing regulations, you'd say you have to clean your training data. But we know with foundation models that you actually want to expose the model to all of the different types of data, and then post-training is way more effective in enabling it not to produce those harmful outcomes. And so that's a totally different type of approach, and to write the regulations that are more focused on the outcome you want instead of the process is not something that is normally done in regulation. And so I think we're just in the journey of figuring out how to do that well, and so there's, you know, both enthusiasm and concern that we're kind of swinging back and forth between.
And the other thing is just the sheer pace of it, and it's come up already in our conversation. It's going to come up throughout the day. I mean, I know, even covering AI full time, it's moving faster than I can keep up with. I'm sure that's the case for the companies. It especially seems like on the responsibility side, it's really hard to keep up when the usage, in addition, the technology is evolving faster than anything I've seen in my career, and the different uses. If you take something like a chatbot, now it's being used as a companion. It's being used for medical advice, mental health. Like, how much is the pace? How do you sort of wrap your head around it? How well do you think we're doing at keeping responsibility at pace with a development pace that is incredibly fast?
So I love the way you frame the challenge, because so many people are just focused on the technology changing, but it is equally the diversity of applications and the creative ways people are putting this to use that are a challenge with responsible AI, because that context matters. And so that is definitely the challenge we're dealing with every day. I think that what I like about it is that it actually throws a lot of options just kind of off the table. So, you know, frankly, 5 years ago, a lot of how everybody did responsible AI was, let's fly in a lot of experts and let's solve it once here. Then let's fly in a lot of experts and let's solve it over here. And, you know, that works, but it is very much limited by like how many responsible AI experts you have. And when we started seeing the scale and diversity and pace of this, it's like, actually we need to invest in, significant responsible AI platform and automation, things like building automated testing, building, real-time guardrail systems that can operate at enormous scale, but that we can change very rapidly. And so we really had to increase our investment to be able to move at that pace and scale. But that's, I think, led to so much more opportunity and innovation for us in responsible AI. And so it's really pushed us into a new place that I don't think I expected to get to. But it does keep us on our toes. We have to work every day and be prepared for unexpected things coming at us.
There's obviously a ton in responsible AI. There's a ton when we say AI, we mean a bunch of different technologies. I want to zoom in on a few of the really tough ones that you can see good uses, you can see bad uses. One of those is certainly the role of AI chatbots as companions, having a relationship. That can be really positive. It can be, I envision, just like Fluffball is really fun for my mother-in-law. I can envision chatbots that talk to people who are homebound and have conversations, a lot of health uses. But we've seen when it's certain groups of people, whether they're young and impressionable or at the borders of mental health, have conversations, it can go really badly. How do you think about how to responsibly have an AI that, whether we like it or not, is becoming a companion, it's becoming something we talk with?
I think this is one of the most important questions that we are working to figure out, because there is so much potential upside here, but you really have to think about what are the kind of the controls and guardrails around it, and the experience for one person might be not the right thing for someone else. And so we've had for years work on human AI interaction and how do you empower the user and how do you put the right amount of transparency in place. And so we're building on top of all of that, but I think there's going to be some learning as we go here. And so we really need to make sure that we are kind of watching for these different circumstances, learning what needs to happen, making sure we're taking feedback, and working with experts in the external community as well. And so I don't think anyone has the answer of what this should ultimately look like.
Has there been a wake-up call, though, within Microsoft, similar to what other companies have talked about realizing, people are having a different level of relationships. People are not necessarily having that rational interaction that they might have had with their computer before?
I think we're shift being chat at the very beginning. One of our initial investment areas we called manipulation, but it was exactly the AI sort of changing the behavior of the human. And we've had people who have been working for years on how to use AI as a therapist and what are the best practices there. And so it was something that's been on our radar very early. And something I think we actually expected to happen, but that doesn't mean that solving the problem is easy, right? There's lots of things to figure out as a society together to get to a place that we all feel good about.
And you mentioned manipulation. I'm curious, one of the things I've been thinking a lot about, I think we're all pretty aware, one of the next thing that's going to happen is advertising is going to come in. It's too big a market not to, there have been rumblings with ChatGPT. I think we all know it's coming, but it, to me, seems potentially really dangerous when you have a technology with at least human, if not soon to be superhuman, persuasive capabilities. Yes, it could show an ad now, but it could also persuade me over time to do almost anything. What guardrails need to be in place before we put advertising into chatbots, and what would a healthy interaction look like?
I think this is part of the spirit of the field of alignment, which is, some of this technology, some of the goal has to be that it's aligned with the user intent and what the user really wants. And so I think we can't kind of forget that part, that the AI system should be working on behalf of the user, not necessarily the
But doesn't advertising inherently change that? Because to me, that is the relationship I have with my chatbot today. One of the, there's plenty of criticisms that people make, but I feel like it's just trying to answer my question.
It depends on the intent, right? If I'm shopping for a hotel for my next trip or something, then bringing options that I'm going to be interested in are, I think, exactly aligned and surfacing things that I might not know about. But there's other cases where maybe if I, don't want to order more matcha, then I shouldn't have it, keep
or
pushing
beauty
that
products
on me.
for teens. I think the nightmare scenario, which again, to me, a lot of this traces back to lessons we never learned during the social media era. I mean, Meta, I believe, had some research. Companies, you can actually see, oh, this person is insecure and vulnerable. There is an opportunity to sell them a product. I think many of us look at that in horror. Are we ready to put chatbots when we haven't even solved these in the social media era? Are we ready for advertising and chatbots?
I think that any of these things will have to be done step by step, and we have to have both the feedback and the guardrails in place, so if we find that it's not working, we can make adjustments quickly, right? There's going to be things that people try that turn out to not make sense, but the thing is to make sure that we're doing it gradually and we're learning as we go.
So turning to another really easy topic, recursive self-learning. This is where the machines learn and get better on their own. This is both really exciting and terrifying. I feel like we're at that moment in a lot of sci-fi movies where they go back in time and blow everything up because it all went downhill from here. I assume you guys are having these conversations. I certainly hope you're having them. How do you build machines that can learn on their own but don't destroy us in the end?
So we're even having like a simpler version of this problem right now with agents because, a lot of what we do with these systems at the moment is say, okay, we'll just test it a lot pre-deployment and know how it behaves, and then you can sign off and ship it, and then of course you're going to monitor some. But the thing is that agents are exciting because because they're so dynamic, and all of the action, all of the interestingness happens after you ship it. And so we are now building in both like ongoing observability and ongoing controls. So you can say, look, these are the things that I care about. These are the metrics that matter to me. These are the guardrails that I want in place, and make sure that those are happening durably as the system runs. And so if you think about a system that's not just being dynamically taking actions, but learning as it goes, then we need a more kind of robust approach to that ongoing observing and human oversight and that ongoing kind of controls and guardrails. And so I think we're starting that foundation with the simpler technology, but it's going to have to look like same kind of playbook where we're still putting humans in control ultimately, and that's going to have technology to support us, but it's also going to have processes and humans and accountability and all of that as well.
And one more super light, easy topic, autonomous warfare. And I know this is one that you all thought about long ago. Like I remember when Aether was really getting started. But at the time, I think there was a hope that there would be a more clear division between we're not going to use this for military purposes. It was a huge discussion in Silicon Valley. Lots of people within the tech companies, within Microsoft, within Google, were saying, we don't want this technology used in that way. And it seems like what we found is, yes, there's that discussion, which is an important discussion we really haven't fully had of how much do we want autonomous weaponry normalized, allowed, et cetera, and if we don't, how do we even enforce that? But then there's a lot of things you can do to use AI for military purposes that aren't just a drone. And I'm curious, how have the conversations within Microsoft evolved around what Microsoft is okay doing and not doing? Obviously, it's come up a lot around Palestine and Gaza, but I'm curious, what are the conversations like around these topics?
Yeah, I think certainly on many topics, including this one, as the field matures and as our understanding matures, the conversations evolve. And so I think that you did have a lot of people in the field start with, okay, we never want the technology to be used in any of these examples. And I think it's evolved to say, like, we really think it's important to think about the concept of fit for purpose and human oversight. So first of all, does the technology actually work appropriately for that use case? Because there's a lot of examples you see where it's not really doing what people think it should be doing, and so it's not even appropriate to use it there.
But in some cases, it's fit for the purpose of the country that wants to use it,
right,
but it's not arguably fit for humanity, and I'm curious.
Right. And so then I think it's back to the human oversight and governance and deciding whether or not, if it works in that case, is it an appropriate use of it? And that's something that I think society has to decide, and that's exactly where things like regulations and international standards around this are really important, because it's not for one company, like we should put forward our thoughts and opinions, but one organization should not decide that for the world. That's something that the world needs to jointly decide for itself.
Well, I would love to continue this lighthearted conversation. I'm told we're out of time, but I appreciate you, one, for coming here and having the conversation, but also I think it's critically important that the companies building these technologies continue to have these conversations of where the technology is at and where it's going.
I completely agree, and I thank you for the very thoughtful questions, because I think these are some of the most important topics of our time, and we do need everybody actually involved in this conversation. As I said, one organization is not going to do it alone.
Thank you so much. Sarah Bird.
Great. Thank you very much.
Put your hands together for our View from the Top moderator, Axios publisher, Nicholas Johnston.
Hello again, everyone. I'm Nicholas Johnston, the publisher of Axios. Thank you so much for sticking with us today through these awesome conversations. And I do want to say that if you have other conversations or maybe phone calls you need to make, the lounge upstairs is now open. I've been reliably informed there is food up there. The bar is not open yet, but give it time, another hour or so, and that'll be open as well. And as I said before, hugely grateful to all of our partners for making this possible. And so a huge thanks to Bank of America, not just for today. They've been with us since the beginning. We opened the doors at Axios almost 9 years ago, supporting our investments in journalism, helping us convene awesome conversations like this. So I'm very excited to welcome to the stage from Bank of America their CIO, Michelle Boston. Michelle, welcome to the Axios stage. Hello.
How are you?
Let's start big picture. Tell us about the CIO role at the bank and what kind of AI investments you're making and on the lookout for.
Yeah, well, there are many CIOs we're one of the largest technology companies in the world, actually. So we are uniquely organized. Our CIO and Chief Technology Officer, Hari, oversees a group of Chief Information Officers for our lines of business, our revenue generating lines of business, our consumer, wealth management, private bank, US trust, commercial and business banking clients and global markets. So we have CIOs dedicated to those businesses. And then we're really uniquely positioned because we have a set of horizontal CIOs. Mm-hmm. And those horizontal CIOs look at the aggregate demand of technology from our lines of business and those client-facing CIOs, and we build scalable horizontal capabilities like AI with global information security. I own the data and analytics and data management space and data protection and privacy. Our technology infrastructure team, our chief technology infrastructure, and then our production support teams. Because those horizontals, along with the horizontal risk and control function, are how you deliver responsible technology, regardless of whether it's the mobile banking app or the online app, or in this case, today we're talking about how you deliver responsible AI.
So let's dig deeper on the AI part of that. I think something that's probably important for everybody thinking about how to deploy AI in their business is how do you pick? So how do you make those determinations? What do you measure? What's the ROI you look for? Where do you look to invest?
Yeah, with any technology, and look, we're in this unique moment in time because the combination of traditional machine learning and AI with generative AI just presents very unique opportunities for any business. But we focus at the bank on a disciplined velocity around understanding our business processes first, and then through those business processes, and we have all 3,700 of them at the bank mapped in great detail, where is AI going to create one of 3 or 4 things?
Yeah.
Is it going to enhance our client's experience and drive revenue growth? Is it going to enable productivity of our associates and employees and improve productivity and allow them to shift to more value-created activities like spending time with clients or higher judgment or strategic or even creative work? Or is it going to reduce risk? And I know we talked about information security as an example, or scale more broadly with the same number of people to reduce risk and ensure operational and compliance and support for those functions.
So it's very data intensive, and like as a bank has enormous amounts of data. Talk about the challenge of like the data setup, right? Like being able to track and manage and understand all of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of my role, and we talked about our enterprise AI strategy. For those of you who work with AI, you know the data and the AI are two sides of the same coin, right? Because you have to start with a strong foundation of high quality, accurate, and complete data, especially in regulated industries, right? If we think of, you're just asking ChatGPT for an answer at home, doing something fun, it can be wrong. When I'm dealing with clients or customers or associates in the context of a regulated business, the accuracy, the transparency, the reliability, data is the fuel to that. The context of the data we give it, the accuracy of the responses. And so we've invested $1.5 billion just in the data space since 2021 to uniquely position us to deliver that AI at scale against a really, really strong bet of high quality.
It's kind of a tip for folks thinking about AI implementation here, is that there's a garbage in, garbage out mentality, and just don't think about what's coming out, think about what's going into that model.
Right.
To make sure what you're getting out is good. You did mention that you're a highly regulated industry. Banks have a lot of rules to follow, like a huge element of trust. How do you make sure the AI is responsible to those rules and that trust relationship that you have with clients?
Yeah, and in some ways, we have a competitive advantage because we were highly regulated, we've been highly regulated. We have a really rigorous risk management framework that we've had in place for a long time. That risk management framework looks at over 16 dimensions of risk, and it's been revisited in light of generative AI to add new risks. Things like transparency, explainability, intellectual property, legal, adversarial threat in the GIS space, model bias. So, and now hallucinations and other concerns unique to generative AI, right? So we've taken that risk framework, and anytime we have a use case where we want to implement, we have a risk management process that assess not only the use case and how we're using it, what's the data, what are the controls we're putting on it, what's the continuous monitoring and alerting, and how do we get comfortable that that control environment mitigates the risks of using AI. And I would say we're very disciplined in that approach. It lets us scale faster though, because we were a little bit slower. When AI first came out in generative AI, we were a little more cautious. We spun up a set of proof of concepts, and we really worked through that proof of concept, that control framework in those proofs of concept.
Right.
So now we can, with confidence, repeat that control framework as we bring new use cases onto our resilient, scalable platforms.
I want to dig into the cultural part of this a little bit. How do you bring the workforce along with you? Like, how do you encourage people to embrace this, how to innovate and reskill in light of it?
I think the first thing you have to do is you really have to create a culture that understands the importance of AI as a human assistant to their day-to-day jobs. And that means you have to give AI assistance or enablements to 200, in our case, 213,000 employees. Microsoft was here earlier. We rolled out our Microsoft Copilot, right? Which enables you to interact and ask questions as part of your general email and your collaboration tools. We actually create prompt playbooks in our businesses where we share best practice around, using Copilot, here's something really useful I'm now able to do that takes time out of my day. So we're creating a culture of celebrating and teaching each other in community. We also have technology focus groups where teams get together and talk about how we can use the technology. For example, our code generation tooling, right? We have 18,000 technologists now generating code using GitHub Copilot. They share best practices all of the time. Right. And we have an academy in-house that is a training and curriculum development, and they are building a rich set of training not only for technology, but for all of our business associates so they can understand things like prompt engineering. What is an agent? How do you think of the art of the possible? And we want to reinforce and kind of celebrate the fact that once you're an employee at Bank of America, our job is to reskill you to use these tools effectively to make you more productive and actually to take toil out of your job, right?
That's a lot of enterprise examples, but as we know here, we like to end on one fun thing, so let's make it one personal AI thing. What's a cool way you're using AI in your life?
The fun things in the data, I have two that I do all the time. One, I usually go to make dinner at night and I look at whatever's in the fridge or the freezer that I haven't gotten out in a while, and I say, hey, I've got 3 things.
Have the robot figure it out.
Give me 3 or 4 recipes that I could make in under 20 minutes for dinner. So I'm an empty nester, my husband and I, so that's a fun one. I also use it for seasonal gardening. I don't know if other people do, but you can tell it where you live. You can tell it what time of year you're wanting to do planting and what kind of flowers or things you like. If you want annuals or perennials, it'll actually design a garden. And you can iterate on the designs and then you just go, it'll do a pick list and you can go to your nursery.
I can attest to that. I've asked AI for planting advice as well, and the plant is alive still. So it must have done work. Michelle, thank you so much for being here. Huge thanks to Bank of America for their years of support of Axios, and now it's time to bring Ina back on stage.
Thank you.
Here she is again, Axios' Ina Fried.
So shifting gears a little, I always love having Aaron Levy on stage because he is incredibly enthusiastic about this technology, but also his company Box is where a lot of companies are adopting this. It's where they're using it. And I'm thrilled to have a chance to kind of check in and see what are his customers doing these days. So Aaron Levy, CEO of Box. So yeah, you're kind of known for being into this AI thing.
I really like AI. So, but for a bunch of reasons. One, it turns out that AI needs data, and I think we just even heard from the last conversation, AI runs on data, and if you think about it as AI models have been trained on the public internet, but for them to be useful inside of an enterprise context, they need your data, and where is your data? By volume, most of it is in your documents, your contracts, your research information, your marketing assets, your invoices, your memos, all of that unstructured data, and that's effectively what we've been building a platform for now 2 decades, is to manage all of that information. And so agents become now the core user of that information in the future. So that's sort of why we're so bullish on this, is like finally the sort of unsolved problem of how do you actually turn all of that data into something that is valuable within your business. Is now playing out. So that's what gets us super excited.
So one of the things I always look forward to reading whenever there's a new model coming out, there's a few things you can be sure of. One, it's going to top every new benchmark out there.
Yes.
The second is you're going to get a tweet about 3 seconds after it comes out from Aaron saying, we've been pre-testing whatever it was, and it's improved. Insert here by X%.
This is positive or is this a roast? What is the, okay, because those are good tweets, I think.
They are, but my question for you is, now I want to make you choose among your children some. There's a lot of discussion that, it was all OpenAI before and now Google's coming on. What does it look like from your perspective? How competitive are Google, OpenAI, and Anthropic, and has there been a change in terms of how close they are to one another?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's so fun about our industry right now is certainly everybody here and anybody tuning in, we are so into the daily skirmishes and the daily battle between all of the AI models, and we think about it truly as a race. And depending on how long you think the race is, we think every single day is sort of this is the moment when something now has broken ahead. I think what will happen is you'll look at this more in 3 or 5 or 10 years from now, and we'll probably laugh a little bit at how much we cared about 1 point improvements on a particular eval or benchmark, because the technology will have gone up by an order of magnitude in capability. But it matters today because everybody has to implement workflows with AI models, and they should probably use the best AI model at any given time within some reasonable amount of what that time period is. And so I think we care for a reason, because we're all looking for some degree of alpha within the implementation of AI. But again, if you look at it over a 5-year period, it's sort of completely anybody's game. And we can't predict who the winner is going to be. We can't predict the order of first, second, third, fourth place, simply because there's just going to be these constant breakthroughs that keep happening. So the thing that I think we just get excited about is you've never had a technology category like this as early in its sort of life cycle, where you have 3, 4, 5 maybe viable platforms that are all competing with as much sort of velocity as what we're seeing in AI, in a way that is available to all of us instantaneously. That's just never happened before. Like in the early days of the cloud, let's say, Amazon had a 2-year window at minimum where they were the only game in town. Then you had Azure emerge. Then you had GCP eventually kind of start to happen. That was like an 8-year period before it was really 3 viable competitors that all kind of came online. We have that with a couple other players in about a 2-year period. And so the great thing from just a user of these technologies, whether as an end user or a developer, is you have hundreds of billions of dollars of capital expenditure and R&D going into technology that you get to use instantaneously. And so that's just a great thing. And so I think we're going to be in this race for quite some time.
Since you mentioned hundreds of billions of dollars of capital, and some of the folks that you mentioned are looking to turn that into trillions of dollars of capital over the next few years, obviously there's a lot of talk, are we in a bubble? And one of the ways that I break that down is you don't have to not believe in AI to also believe we could be in a bubble. It's also about the pace of investment. And we were talking about this with Clay and Brett, that the .com, almost all those ideas came to fruition. We have pets.com as a sustainable business. We have Webvan. We even have Cosmo. But there was definitely a bubble, a boom, a bust, and then a long sort of building of something sustainable. Do you think something similar is happening with AI, or do you think good times are here?
What do you think my answer is going to be?
Well, I read some of those tweets, and they seem pretty happy. I mean, it's working out well for you guys.
I mean, a couple of differences. So I remember using Cosmo.com, and it was not, anywhere near using Instacart or DoorDash today. And on a dial-up internet connection, Cosmo and Webvan is just very different from pulling up your phone and getting access to a meal. And so I think the comparison, the challenge is that in the .com bubble, you had a couple 100 million people online globally on the internet. So that was your TAM instantaneously. You were constrained by that many people. Then you had a whole bunch of people that had to just figure out what is this whole internet thing, and they had to change a whole bunch of behavior because PCs had really only come into their life in the past decade. We're in a very different environment. We have, 5, 6 billion people online, let's say. It is just a rite of passage of everybody on the planet is online. So your TAM now is 2 orders of magnitude more than it was, in the .com boom. We have these technologies are obviously, already extremely capable. If you look at search traffic and how much it's already shifted to ChatGPT or to AI mode in Gemini. I think these are technologies that are already rolling out much faster than if you were to kind of compare it to, let's say, 1997 in internet terms, we're way ahead on a relative basis based on that adoption. So that's the first part. But I think the bigger thing from a TAM standpoint is the TAM truly is effectively all knowledge work. And eventually it'll get even into industrial work as well. But let's just say the TAM is all of knowledge work. And if you imagine that maybe 5 or 10% of knowledge work gets converted into revenue for AI systems broadly, then the numbers of the capital, the capex right now are just they pale in comparison to that TAM. And so I think that's the bet that everybody's making. Could it be mistimed by a year or 3 years or 5 years? Sure, it's very plausible. But I think for anybody who's in the game right now, because you can't know if you underbuild, you will find out in just the form of loss of market share. If you overbuild, you have time to kind of work through that. And the other big difference is, unlike Webvan and Cosmo or whatever, the people that might overbuild are multi-trillion-dollar companies. And so their ability to sustain long periods of time where maybe the adoption needs to
some
come
of them
online.
are. So, Google, Meta, Microsoft, yes. OpenAI, they're talking about spending trillions, but they're not making trillions.
Yeah, I think that OpenAI, Anthropic, a few others are probably getting to a stage where there's enough support in the ecosystem because of the kind of criticality, not from a too big to fail kind of standpoint, just like truly like they're powering enough very important technology that people will pay. Right now, we're paying less because everybody keeps competing down the profit margins. But if in a world where they had to just somehow make the data center expense work, we would pay double the price if we needed. Like it's like the value and productivity that these systems are offering. At some point, already I'm surprised that it's as cheap as it is. I know why from a competitive and Moore's law standpoint, but like we're benefiting from how competitive this market is. And in a moment where somebody had to pay $100 billion for a data center, there's like lots of ways the business model would work out.
And from your perspective,
and this is even before $1 of revenue for advertising in ChatGPT. So that gets lit up, boom, you have tens of billions of dollars in revenue.
So given what you said about all knowledge work potentially, AI capable, you didn't talk about it all going to AI. But one of the questions my cousin who's graduating college asked me, so what field should I go into?
Yeah.
And I don't have a good answer because we hear about types of jobs that are going away, but most of the jobs that are going away that are not going away so things like caregiving and real hands-on stuff aren't necessarily the jobs that everyone's clamoring to get. Some people want to do them; they're important jobs. But if you are giving the advice, what kinds of jobs do you think will exist several years from now that are desirable?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably where I'm 99th percentile on the optimistic end of the spectrum. I think that the people that predict the mass job destruction will be proven wrong. I think that I generally see AI in the normal arc of technology kind of history, which is we get new tools that moves us up an abstraction layer from what we were doing previously, but we effectively do a higher order of work than we were before, and I've not seen an example at any real large scale where AI is not sort of delivering that. Part of the reason is actually, ironically, and I think we'll probably talk about it later, maybe with Gary or others, is the technology has limitations. It fundamentally requires humans to provide the oversight over an AI system, and we don't know how to stop that. We don't know how to get to a point where that goes away. There's people maybe followed there was a great piece from Dorkesh Patel this weekend that sort of imagined, at some point maybe the AGI will emerge and it will learn your whole business and it will operate autonomously. But today we don't have that. And the reality is that AI is very good at tasks. Jobs are collections of tasks. And as AI improves, it will be able to do more of those tasks. And let's just imagine that somehow it kind of sustains that progress over time. Then the thing I have a lot of conviction on is that today's jobs are tomorrow's tasks. And so we just move up another kind of layer of what work looks like. And so it means that an engineer might be able to do 3 times the amount of tasks that they were before. But guess what? The world wants 10 times more software. And so you didn't actually change the underlying equation of how many engineers you need. And I think that's going to be true of more categories than we think. I don't think the world has enough medical breakthroughs, and I don't think the world has enough doctors working with patients, and I don't think the world has enough engineers building software for the next set of problems that are going to exist. So that kind of, to me, convinces me that you aren't going to see this sort of wholesale shift in the kind of jobs that we do. The work will look very different, but I don't think you're going to see broad changes in how many engineers a company employs, maybe plus or minus 10 or 20%, but or how many sales reps a company has, or how many people doing marketing. What will happen is the output of those organizations will just go up by 3x or 5x.
And is that what you've seen inside Box?
Already, I'll give you a quick example of the kind of thing that anybody predicting the end of jobs never sees until you get access to the technology. So anybody in a B2B company, we have these roles called sales engineers. Sales engineers, their job is to go to the customer. They're the technical counterpart of the sales team. They go to the customer. They make sure that the customer sort of understands how the technology works, and they work in a kind of consultative fashion with the customer. usually the sales engineer is doing demos and maybe doing some presentations and getting kind of technical requirements from the customer. Now, with things like Cursor or any kind of vibe coding technology, you're going to see them start to build full custom environments for that customer. And they'll build just full custom software. And I was in a sales pitch a month and a half ago where one of our sales engineers built an entire custom portal for that client with that client's branding with Box built into it. The time that sales engineer spent preparing for that customer call was actually more than they would have pre-AI. So actually, we didn't save any time. We actually spent more time now selling to this customer. But guess what? The efficacy of that sales process is now going to go up. The quality of it will go up. Our win rate will go up. Maybe eventually that gets competed out because everybody will have to do that just to stay competitive, just to stay on at today's level. We might all have to do that. And then in that world, guess what? Our ratios are just wrong. We'll need more sales engineers because the customer will expect that you're building full custom prototypes and environments for them in the sales pitch. That's the kind of thing that no economist predicts in advance of this technology. That because they're not going to say, okay, well, the cost of building software goes down. They think today's software demand is fixed. So if the cost of delivering software goes down, then you just have fewer engineers. Turns out, actually, if you lower the cost of building software, you have 10 times the number of use cases for software. That's the part that everybody sort of misses until you have access to the tool. So my general advice for, maybe 70% of people, let's say in college, I think there's probably some areas where you'd have to be more specific, is just get really, really good at whatever the thing is that you're interested in or studying. Like, get really, really good at marketing, get really, really good at sales, get really, really good at engineering. And yes, use AI to do it all, but your job is not to be a prompt engineer. Your job is to be freaking good at judgment in whatever domain or category that you're interested in or that you think you should get a job in on the other end. And then use AI to increase the productivity of what you're doing. So I just have not seen evidence where you should fundamentally change your whole view on what kind of roles to take. Even in the cases where maybe you have customer support roles that will increasingly take fewer and fewer work because agents will answer the question. That same person will do a customer success management job in the future. And so now they'll just be in an outbound role as opposed to an inbound role. So we as an economy will have to certainly go through some shifts to make sure everybody lands in the right spot at the end of this. But I'm not seeing convincing evidence that wholesale jobs fundamentally change in the way that I think are being predicted from the doomers.
So going into this, I thought of you as kind of a big optimist. That has not changed. But I do wonder, for someone who is so optimistic, where are the things that you are like, oh, we got to be careful there?
Yeah.
What are the things that you actually think we should be spending some time being more careful on, worrying about, whether that's safety or I don't know? What are the things where you're like, I'm not worried about the job thing, I am worried about this. What's the this?
I'm very worried, but short of regulation, I'm very worried, around security and, there's going to be some incredibly spectacular security events as a result of AI because you've already seen, interesting kind of experiments. You can prompt inject an AI and pull out something from data it has access to. The quick, simple way to think about it is anything an AI system has access to, you as a user, if you have access to that AI system, can eventually pull it out because the AI will not be able to fully keep secrets within its context window. So if you give an AI access to your entire database and you give a user access to the AI, then you'll be able to get anything from that database into the user. You'll eventually be able to prompt inject your way into that. We don't know how to solve that at the moment. So this is why, a lot of the core principles of having separation of duties between what systems do or what data things have access to or having really high quality access controls and security, this is going to matter even more in a world of AI. And this is, partly why I'm so bullish on the SaaS category generally, and certainly, products like Box is in a world where you might have 100 or 1,000 times more AI agents, then that's 100 or 1,000 times more complexity of things that need to access your enterprise resources, whether that's data or workflows or software. So then the control plane that kind of controls and traffic cops who has access to what and what workflow is being triggered when, that becomes even more important to get right in the future. So the agents are super important, but actually the systems that agents run on become even more important and valuable. So security, certainly safety in the models, making sure that again they're not doing whatever we might all collectively consider as dangerous practices. But I have found that at least within the Valley and probably most of the organizations we care about, I think safety has sort of, just by the virtue of it becoming a very important topic for anybody doing AI research, I think it's taken very seriously by the industry. And I've been happy that of the level of focus that everybody's had without needing massive, overhanded, kind of aggressive regulation.
Well, that would be a whole point to debate for another day.
Yes.
But we have about a minute left. I'm curious, when we come back a year from now, where do you think this is all going that people don't realize? What are we going to be able to do in the short term that most people aren't aware we're going to be able to do really soon?
Yeah, I think the big opportunity, let's say, and this is sort of why I think everybody's timelines are wrong, though, is because I think it will take longer than maybe some realize, but we still will use all of the token capacity in the data centers, and I think the data center buildup is necessary for this. But everybody knows Cursor and Replit and Lovable and Bolt and the sort of codecs and vibe coding or at least agents that will generate a lot of code. We know that in the coding space, and my general expectation is we will see that across all of knowledge work. So the lawyer will have that within their organization, and the marketer will have that, and the researcher at a life sciences company will have that equivalent. There's a big difference, though, is the way you code, the systems you use to code, how text-driven code is. All of these things are built for coding agents to be hyper successful. As you get into other areas of knowledge work, it's just not as clean or as simple as we've seen in coding, so that's why it will take longer. But I think over the next 1 to 3 years, that will be the paradigm shift, which is we don't just go to a chat interface and ask a question and go back and forth. We will send tasks to an agent, it will go do work for us, and then we go review the work that the agent kicked off. And that's again why the data centers end up being important, because that type of activity with AI might use 100 or 1,000 times more tokens than just asking a simple question of an LLM. And so a lot of the data center build out is in anticipation of that type of use case, or to respond to even today's need for that use case, which is why I think we're going to use the capacity.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for bringing your enthusiasm.
See you.
Thanks, Aaron.
Sit tight for more featuring Axios co-founder Mike Allen. And don't forget to stick around after the show for our VIP.
Yeah, no, I love your stuff. And
give it up for Axios tech policy reporter Maria Curie.
That's all good.
All right.
Sometimes that is all we need to do.
No, exactly.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I think we all remember what classrooms used to look like. There was a chalkboard, there was an actual, teacher, there was an hour of recess. But kids today are learning with AI tools that are learning themselves alongside them. And Alpha School is really reimagining how the education system in the US is looking today. To talk about this, we have AJ Sarcioni, who is the head of storytelling at Alpha School. AJ, join us on stage. Hey. Hi. Okay, so AJ, I think Alpha School is not something that everybody is familiar with. Why don't you just start out by telling us what it actually is, and why is AI so integral to its mission?
Yeah, so Alpha School is, as you said, reimagining the future of education. And we believe that there's not any other more exciting time than right now to be a 5-year-old because of that. And the way that we focus on everything at Alpha is around 3 commitments. The first is that kids will love school. The second, that they're going to learn 2x in 2 hours. And then the third is, with that time back, they'll be able to focus on life skills through team-based workshops. And as a result, they get to be more kids, and that's why it's exciting to be a 5-year-old right now.
Right, that's the promise of this school, is that the first 2 hours, you're gonna learn twice as much as a regular school day, which is about 6 hours long. And we are going to watch now a video that Alpha School has put together. It's testimonials of kids who have gone to this school and their experiences in this type of classroom.
This workshop is called Steam Engine. In this workshop, we're learning how to create our own video games using AI. Before this workshop, workshop. I had very little experience with coding. My feelings going to this workshop were really excited because I really wanted to build my own video game. How AI is helping me is I tell it what I want in my video game and it does it for me, which is really nice. My game is a smoothie business. My video game is where you shoot hoops against a defender that can block and move. The goal is to beat your high score every time. My favorite part of the workshop, I get to code my own video game in a way that I like playing video games, but this one, it's really fun for me because it's all of my passions into a game. With AI as your sidekick, you can accomplish anything.
AJ, tell us a little bit about what these workshops entail. And then we saw a lot of screens here, but not all of the workshops have to do with screens. This is something that a lot of parents are kind of struggling to manage right now, the screen time. So tell us what we just saw.
So what's really exciting about Alpha for the screens is that in other traditional situations, kids are oftentimes spending more time on screens in those traditional schools. And that's because we've been able to personalize education with Time Back, our tool that we're going to get into today, that allows us to deliver personalized, individualized learning for students so they're getting exactly what they need at the pace in which they need so they can master their academics. Because of that, then we have time for the rest of the day to do amazing workshops. This one I brought today because they're leveraging AI, and the girl says, you know, with AI, anything is possible. And at Alpha, we truly believe in limitless possibilities of our students, and we believe as a school that if a child comes and they're not reaching that limitless possibility in their life, it's on us as a school to figure out what's wrong. Why are they not loving school? Why are they not getting 2X in 2 hours? And why do they not have, you know, the life skills that help them do this? In these workshops, they're learning how to change tires. They're learning how to, at very young ages, run 5Ks. They're out there doing all these amazing projects together in these team-based workshops. Some of our high school students are developing AI-powered teddy bears that help people with mental health and help apps that help people with wellness for mental health. So there's all these amazing ways that they're leveraging the rest of their day to bring to life grit, resilience, leadership, public speaking, stuff that many of us in this room today as leaders wish that we had. So we're enabling our students to have that for the future.
And talk to us a little bit about who the adults in the room are exactly, because these are not necessarily teachers with education backgrounds. They're called guides. What exactly is a guide? How are you recruiting these people?
Yeah. So guides are teachers. They're what we call our teachers. Many of them have quite extensive education backgrounds, and some of them don't. We have MBA coaches and people that worked at Google. The thing that they all need to have is an ability to motivate. And so because of the tool and the way that the tool works to be able to deliver what a child needs when they need it and fill in the gaps of their education to get to mastery, the guide is there to help make sure that if there's anything that they're stuck on, they're able to move them forward. And there's this amazing story of a guide that we have in Fort Worth named Sam, who I just adore. And she told me after being a Fulbright scholar and going around the world and teaching in all these different places and even starting some schools herself, she never felt that she truly met her purpose until she came to Alpha. And her purpose was to be able to make an impact in kids' lives. And it's once she came to Alpha and she was able to leverage our Time Back tool where she could see exactly what every single student needed, that she was able to meet them where they were at in an individualized way that made her feel like everything she wanted in life was coming true. And there's a story where this kid was on the app and they were struggling with subtracting 8. And she could see that through our dashboard. And as a result, she was able to build a workshop in the afternoon that helped that student learn how to subtract 8. So then when they went back into their learning tool the next day into Time Back, and they had to go back and try to fill in that gap, they were actually able to master it and move forward. So
we're going to see another video here soon, just kind of showing exactly what these tools look like. Let's go ahead and put that up on the screen. AJ, what are we looking at here?
So this is Time Back itself right here. And every time a kid logs in, their dashboard looks different because it's individualized to them. And so they're getting what they need. It's telling them what they're supposed to be learning. And you'll see with these graphs here, there was some circles that are showing what their daily goals are supposed to be that they need to achieve. And then these graphs are showing over time what they've been learning and what they've been mastering. Sometimes when you see those peaks, that's when they're actually taking a test to show that they have that level of mastery. But as we go deeper into the video, we're looking at a high school student using AlphaWrite. And with AlphaWrite, they're being able to get immediate feedback on building out an essay. So we use AlphaWrite with our younger grades starting in grade 3, where they're learning how to write sentences. Once they master that, then they move on to writing paragraphs. And then at about 6th grade, they start writing essays, and then that continues throughout high school. And as you can see, she's getting the immediate feedback from the tool. It's not generative. It's giving, deliberate feedback based upon her inputs. So then she can go and refine them, get to a place where it says, okay, you're ready to move forward, start typing her essay, and then again, get immediate feedback so she can then master this essay and move on to the next one.
Right, so it's not generative, and I think that is something that a lot of parents today are also grappling with, is how children and young people are interacting with chatbots. So to be clear, this is not any type of chatbot function. Is that something that Alpha School would do in the future or is discussing right now to do in the future?
No, so we like to say if you're using that in the morning during your academics with this, you're cheating. If you don't engage with some AI tools in the afternoon, you're behind. But with our AI tools that we do use in the morning with time back, it's not generative. So it's delivering exactly what a student needs based upon different ed tech tools and applications, whether they're our own or other ones that we leverage, to give them exactly what they need, when they need it, how they need it, so they can master it and then continue to move forward.
And tell us about AlphaBucks. This is the way that you are incentivizing students to kind of get through each level of education, is that right?
Yeah, so in K through 8, kids are rewarded with AlphaBucks. In high school, they actually earn real money that goes to their Alpha X projects, which can be these incredibly massive projects of creating a Broadway musical or building out a skate park, and then they use that funding to actually help do it. And the idea around this, whether it's that or whether it's they're being rewarded by being able to go sit in one of our really cool areas of the school, in bean bags or other things that they're offered, is that it's extrinsic motivation. And then because of that, it's developing intrinsic motivation to push them to be able to believe anything is possible, as that girl said, and to get to limitless possibility to achieve the things that they need to achieve each day and to continue to advance forward.
Yeah. AJ, I'm in DC following the policy debates around all of this, and we have seen the Education Secretary, Linda McMahon, visiting Alpha schools, saying that she really sees the promise of this type of schooling for the future of public education. These schools right now cost between $40,000 and $75,000 a semester. Do you think that kids of every socioeconomic level will eventually be able to obtain this kind of education?
I do, because as we all know, AI is very expensive right now. So as the cost of that comes down, we can only imagine that everything will come down and make it more accessible. What I really think is important about what we're doing is that we're imagining something different. And that because it's proving to be successful, it's giving people a new way to look at what the future of education can become. So as those costs can continue to come down, the ways that it could reach more people is totally there.
And is the idea that this specific model would work in every socioeconomic setting the idea, essentially?
Yeah, because as you look at time back, no matter who uses the tool, you probably are very familiar. All of our classes rank in the top 1% nationally. So one might think, a student needs to be at a certain level in order to be able to leverage this, and it's not that at all. It's because that high performance that we find with our students is not a prerequisite. It's an outcome of the tool doing exactly what it's meant to do, and we can only hope that that could reach everyone, billions of kids.
Yeah. AJ, what can you share in terms of what is next for Alpha School? Are you opening new locations in specific cities? Are you looking at new use cases for AI? What can we expect next?
Yeah, so as many of you might already know, we started in Austin in 2024, and we have K through 12 there. We have schools popping up this year all around the country, one of which is here in San Francisco, and there will be more coming. And so I just encourage anyone that is interested in this to go on our website, alpha.school, and look up to see if there's a school already in your community. Attend one of our info sessions. And the best thing you can do is if you have a student that's of grade level of where we have those schools, get them into one of our shadow days, because it's really exciting when parents see their kids come running out at the end of the day after they've experienced kids love school, kids learn 2x in 2 hours, and kids learn life skills in team-based workshops, and they come running out saying, when do I get to join Alpha? So
great. AJ, thank you so much for showing us what the future of education could look like. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Please give a warm welcome back to the stage, Ina Fried.
So I'm excited for our next conversation because we have another person who is very shy about their opinions about AI. So without further ado, please welcome Gary Marcus.
So shy, so shy.
You know, you're known occasionally to share a thought or two on how the industry's doing. You recently posted a few thoughts on OpenAI, compared them to some other illustrious tech companies. I think WeWork and Theranos were in there.
I did not mention Theranos in connection to OpenAI in this calendar. No, that's probably not true. I didn't in the recent essay in any case. WeWork I did connect them to. I mean, the valuation, $500 billion for a company that has never made a profit and is now threatened by Google Gemini and many others. There's no moat there. There's no technical moat. Like, it doesn't really make sense to me. And so I think it is possible that their valuation could drop precipitously. They could get absorbed by Microsoft. I mean, there are a lot of different scenarios, but you know, I think everybody saw the Brad Gerstner moment when Gerstner kind of lobbed him a softball and said, just explain what the strategy is here. You know, you make $13 billion or whatever it is in revenue. You have $1.4 trillion in
That doesn't work out? I typed in ChatGPT, that said that's good math.
It's ChatGPT math.
So, but I want to challenge you. It's fun, and we should have some fun and so forth. But I'm also curious, because you've been pretty consistent about your views on sort of LLMs and their value. And do you use them on a regular basis? Do you test it out? Because I find it's pretty darn useful. You can believe that it's not the path to AGI and it's not broadly applicable for every task, and still get a whole lot of use out of these. Do you not have that experience?
There's two things there. One is I think they are genuinely useful, not for me. So they are genuinely useful, for example, for coding. There's no question about that. I have said that right along. There's no question that they're useful for brainstorming. I've said that right along. If the cost of error is low, if you have a human in the loop that can check it and so forth, there are a bunch of applications. My own interest is in AGI. And so new model comes out, and I try it out, and it still has the same problems that I've been writing about for a quarter century. Hallucinations, reasoning problems, and so forth. And at that level, I never really see any change. And then the other thing is, like, what do I do? So I don't code anymore. I have a bunch of times in my life, but I don't happen to be doing any coding right now. Most of what I'm doing is writing, and I like the writing. And so, like, for me, I don't want it to write for me, and I don't like the writing that it does. I don't trust its facts, etc. So for me, it doesn't have any particular value, except you know, I like to experiment occasionally to see, can it solve these problems yet.
Have you tried recently? You're finished writing, you're done, you're really happy with it, and saying, what are some possible criticisms to this? What might someone who disagrees say?
I haven't done that. I think I know pretty well what my critics say usually, but I mean, maybe that'd be an interesting exercise.
So I've been asking everyone about, are we in a bubble? I have some guesses where you might go.
Oh, sorry, let me, before we get to the bubble, somebody did just send a critique of ChatGPT of Gary Marcus, and it was wrong on most of its details. The weirdest thing was...
But you say your human critics are wrong on most of their
Many of them are. I mean, that is true. In particular, most of the things that it said that I said, I didn't actually say, which I guess is kind of typical of the hallucination system. It is also true that many of my human critics like to misrepresent me. So
it's reached parity with humans.
So in that way, it has reached parity with some humans, yeah.
So on the bubble question, my guess is you might vary slightly from Aaron Levy's take on things. What elements of a bubble do you see? Is it the, tens of billion dollars in revenue and $1 trillion in spending? Does that kind of worry you?
Yeah, I mean, I've been writing about this for a couple of years, in fact. I think LLMs will continue to exist for a while. I think the fundamental problem is that they're heading towards a commodity. So I started to think about this stuff in 2023. I wrote an essay in August 23, and I was thinking about what is the consequence of a likely phase of diminishing returns, where everybody is building the same kinds of systems, and so nobody has a technical moat. It's like, what is the consequence of that? And I realized that meant that LLMs were going to become a commodity. I also realized that given the nature of the architecture itself and how they do things, which we could talk about, that they're unlikely to solve problems of hallucinations. I figured we were not going to get to some chat GPT-5 that was going to be AGI the way a lot of people were talking about it a couple of years ago. And so I said, what are the natural consequences? Well, if it's a commodity, you're just not going to make that much revenue. And also you're scaling it, so it's going to be more and more expensive. And so you're going to reach this point where it's just not going to make good financial sense. And that's, I think, what the world is now kind of looking at is, the return on investment has not been that high. The costs are very high. Nobody except NVIDIA is making all that much money. Maybe one or two companies, who knows, making money. But, the big players are losing money. And the commodity problem and this kind of like pileup of similar models, they're all better than 4, but none of them are what we imagined for GPT-5, is such that now Gemini sort of slides in there. It's not, radically better than the other one, but Google could afford to give it away cheaper. You can ask our next guest if he has any comments on that. But, if they want to annihilate OpenAI, they probably can.
But there does seem to be a little bit of a dichotomy here. On the one hand, the technology isn't very good at anything from your perspective. At the same,
it's good at some things, as I said a second ago, right? It is good at some things, but are the economics there? So let me try a slightly different formulation, which is I think that AGI will be worth trillions of dollars, right? If you could replace the entire knowledge economy of the United States alone, that's probably $1 trillion or more, right? So I think AGI will be worth a lot of money. But the rate limiting step with LLMs is the accuracy, the reliability that I keep harping on. And that means for many tasks that you just can't count on them. And you certainly can't just stick it into your process the way that people were imagining a couple years ago and say, hey, just go work with my data. The reality is to make it work in any system, you wind up building a lot of classical engineering around your task. And maybe it can't do your task at all, and so forth. And so when people get in the weeds, after having built a prototype that seems amazing, they discover it's really hard to make it reliable enough. I think a lot of people have discovered that. So yes, you can find some stuff to do. You can do some customer service stuff and so forth. But you can't do the whole knowledge economy. There are too many jobs where there's a high cost of error or where you have to generalize beyond the data that you've seen before, et cetera, where these systems are actually kind of weak. And so that limits their scope. If they were as cheap to operate as classical software, they'd still be worth a lot, right? I mean, coding's probably worth, $20 billion a year, $40 billion a year? If you could really replace all coders, that would be even more. But coding assistants are maybe worth $10 or $20 billion a year. But that's just not enough revenue to justify, trillions of dollars in expenditure. So the math doesn't work.
So we've talked about some of your critiques. There's a few more I want to get to. But one of the things I'm curious is, we hear all the time what you don't like about AI as we have it today. But this is your field. You're studying AI.
I actually love AI. I want it to work.
So that's what I want to do. What would a good deployment of AI look like for you? What should we be doing? What is promising? How do we get there? Where should we be spending our time and energy?
So there's a few different things. So one is we should stop trying to build these general purpose chatbots. They just don't work that well for many tasks. There's some value in them, but we should probably focus more on domain-specific solutions. My favorite one is from your next guest, AlphaFold, right? AlphaFold does one thing and only one thing, but does it really well. It doesn't do it perfectly. There's some limits on it, but it takes in a string of nucleotides. It spits out a three-dimensional structure. It has built-in constraints to allow it to do that. It's a mixture of innateness and learning, and it works great. And we should do more of that. Now, there are reasons why that solution is not general purpose. You can't do what they did there everywhere. But I think trying to work on scientific problems with focus, trying to have pre-built knowledge where you need it, instead of being doctrinaire, trying to learn everything from data, but still doing some learning, I think that's useful. So that's one kind of answer. Another kind of answer is we need to build neurosymbolic AI, and I can walk you through what that means, and world models. I wrote a piece in 2020 called The Next Decade in Archive, and Next Decade in AI, which is in Archive, and pointing to 4 things. And world models and neurosymbolic AI were kind of at the top of the list. So neurosymbolic AI is integrating
To explain it real quick, that's AI that kind of works the way a human brain works.
I mean, yes and no.
Okay.
So the way in which it's kind of like yes is some people here probably know Kahneman's System 1 and System 2 distinction in his bestseller Thinking Fast and Slow. So symbolic AI, neural networks are kind of like Kahneman's System 1, which is fast, automatic, reflexive, and so forth. And most of what we have right now, not all, but most of the AI we have right now works that way. System 2 is supposed to be deliberative. It's more maybe driven by facts, by reasoning relative to those facts, drawing true conclusions if the premises are true, and so forth. That's like symbolic AI. That's what classical AI did. They actually have different strengths and weaknesses. And there's a sociology where the people who have worked on the two kind of hate each other. They fought over resources and grad students and money.
I was just interviewing Dekai around the block on the library, who has a book on this.
So we need to bring them together, right? Neural networks are really good at learning, but they're not good at abstract reasoning. And you periodically see these absolutely bizarre things. The symbolic stuff is good at abstract reasoning, but not nearly as good at learning. We need some kind of bringing together of them. So that's one thing, but that's only necessary. It's not sufficient. One way to think about it is like telling people that you can build a computer program, and here's how a program works, here's what an if statement is, and here's what a function is, and so forth, only gets you so far. You ultimately need to build operating systems, and you need to have patterns of design like model view controller and so forth. So it gets you into the game to know what a coding system is, but then you have to build appropriate code, and there can be lots of layers. So neurosymbolic AI, which I would say is still nascent, gets you into a new game in which you can integrate pattern recognition that neural networks do well with symbolic representation. And there are some good examples of it. I believe that AlphaFold is one, and certainly systems like, but not all the details are public, certainly systems like Alpha Geometry and Alpha Proof are explicitly neurosymbolic, and they do some pretty interesting things. So there's been some progress, but we don't have enough practice in it. The other thing that we really need is world models. So,
and that has become a big area of investment.
And that has become a big area of interest. And it should. The argument I made back to 2019 is that LLMs don't have world models. And people looked at me like it was an alien, but the reality is they don't. They don't systematically parse the world into particular entities and things. So like right now, people can look at us on the stage and they can say, well, they're sitting in chairs and there's a projected background, and they can think of us as people. So, we have psychology where, you're nodding your head, so you're probably following me, or maybe you'll interrupt me if you don't. And so the audience is building a model of us and the things that we're talking about. And LLMs are bad at building new models of things. My favorite example of this is chess, right? An LLM gets trained on millions of games of chess because they're in the database. They read everything that's in the internet. So they have millions of examples of games of chess. They have millions of copies of the rules of chess, like chess.com and Wikipedia. They have books about chess, like Bobby Fischer Teaches Chess, which is the book that I learned chess from. They have all of this, and they can even answer a question like, can a queen jump over a knight? They'll get it correct, but then they will play, and they will sometimes make illegal moves if you're far from the typical position, like having a queen jump over a knight. So they don't build a mental model, to use terms from psychology, or a world model, cognitive model, of how chess actually operates, what the board is, what the pieces can do. this is a serious failing and it limits everything. All the hallucinations we see are because they're not proper world models. I wrote a whole essay about my friend Harry Shearer, whose voice everybody knows because he does Mr. Burns in The Simpsons. So he's a well-known person, so his Wikipedia will tell you where was he born, Los Angeles, right? And yet somebody sent him a biography, which he passed along to me, written by ChatGPT, that said that Harry Shearer was a British actor, right? The data are immediately available. Because he's a reasonably well-known actor, you can find it in IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, and it's not hard to find where it's actually born. If you had a proper world model, in that case, just stuff that's in the boxes in Wikipedia, which should be trivial to enter into your world model, then you could make an inference over it, and you could say, there's so much data for the conclusion that he's born in Los Angeles, and no actual data for the notion that he's British. This must be wrong. But an LLM can't do that. It doesn't actually fact check, it doesn't actually work with reference to something like a database, or really you need many databases. And there are different kinds of kludges, if you know that word, like clumsy solution, with duct tape and rubber band, where people use techniques like RAG and so forth, but none of them work that well. This is still a core problem with LLMs, is they do not have a proper world model. And so yes, some people are finally recognizing that. I'm not sure they're fully recognizing it. There's a notion of a world model which is basically just like predicting what happens next in a video, which I think is not a strong enough notion of world model. And we'll see a bunch of work about that in the next few years.
And what else do you think is missing from the conversation? We only have about a minute left. Where should we be putting more of our time and energy?
I think the things that I just mentioned, and also I'll just put in a pitch for ethics. I think that we need to think about how we're going to build an ethical AI where artists and writers are compensated, where you can't just make deepfake, non-consensual deepfake porn of teenagers and so forth. And the other problem with LLMs is you can't really align them. You just put in stuff like don't hallucinate, and they hallucinate anyway. If you say don't do harm to humans, they do anyway, or at least potentially do anyway. And so we need a much stronger solution to the alignment problem. My last thing I'll say is I think LLMs are like a dress rehearsal, right? They're not AGI. Anybody who thinks they are is just not really following the technical detail well enough, I think. But they give us a chance to think about what would the world be like if we had AGI. And one of the things that I think we've failed on is to figure out how to meaningfully regulate them such that they are safe. And that's really something we should think about.
That's a good point. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gary Marcus. Thank you so much. We do have one more guest who might have a slightly different take on where we are on the path to AGI. If you liked this program, be sure to attend or tune in to our upcoming stop. I think we have a slide. We're going to be doing this all again next year. So we have March 25th will be in DC. That's earlier than it's been in past years. June 3rd will be in New York, and then we'll be back here in San Francisco at some point, so stay tuned. And then for any of you that are going to the World Economic Forum in Davos, we will have our Axios house with a full week of programming. Let us know you're going. We'd love to have you involved and attending some of our programs. I will see you all at the reception, and we have one more guest that I think you'll all want to hear from. Thank you.
To close out today's program, please welcome none other than Axios co-founder, Mike Allen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Big finish. I'm Mike Allen, co-founder of Axios. On behalf of my co-founders, Roy Schwartz, Jim Van High, thank you to all of you who, for coming up 9 years now, have been fans of Axios. And thank you for turning out here in San Francisco in this historic bank, this very cool setting for this Axios AI plus SF Summit. Welcome to all of you around the world. For our big finish, Demis Hassabis, PhD, co-founder and CEO of Google DeepMind. He's a neuroscientist, an entrepreneur, an AI pioneer. Demis was a chess prodigy at 5, a Nobel laureate at 48. He's a British-born genius. He's been knighted. Demis Hassabis, welcome to Axios. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
We've been looking forward to this. We
Great to be
appreciate
here.
It was just over 400 days ago that you found out you were a Nobel laureate.
Yep.
And you said in that moment, you said, this is surreal.
Mm-hmm.
This is the big one.
Yep.
What has changed since then about your life and work? What has it made possible?
Well, look, it's still pretty surreal, actually. It still hasn't fully sunk in. But it has made quite a big difference. The thing it makes a difference to is when you speak to people not in your field, including big government people, things like that, who maybe don't know that much about AI. If you have the Nobel Prize, it's a sort of shortcut to almost anyone to know that you're expert in your field. So it's going to be useful, I think, in the future.
And you had endless resources at your disposal. Are there new resources that you have or that you think you can tap now?
Not really. I mean, you're right. We're lucky at Google and at DeepMind. We have a lot of resources. They're not endless. We always need more compute, no matter how much compute you have. But we have a lot of great things, which is why we're able to do such a broad portfolio of things. But it's mostly, again, this platform it gives you to basically speak out about things that you care about. And I haven't done a lot of that yet, but I think it will be important. Maybe we're going to talk about AI safety and other things. I think the Nobel and the platform that gives you could be useful for that.
And what's on the short list of, in addition to AI safety, that you think you'll be talking more about using your platform?
Yeah, well, it's not just about safety in the long term, AGI safety. Obviously, we think a lot about that, but it's also about responsible use of AI today. What are the kinds of things we should be using AI to improve and to power up and to accelerate, and maybe what sorts of things we should be careful about even in the near term. So I think that's one thing. I think also just getting society ready for what's to come. AGI, probably the most transformative moment in human history, is on the horizon. And we need to get prepared as a society and as a species. And I think, of course, governments and other important people, other important leaders are going to be critical in that. And I think having something like the Nobel platform opens pretty much any door.
One of the things that distinguishes you is you're deep in the science, and yet you also are on the front line of this fight and this race among companies, hyperscalers, superpowers, and you, sort of in the mold of Steve Jobs, you also have a product mind. You want to create delightful things for people, but you always say you're a scientist first.
Yeah, science. I'm a scientist first. The reason I say that is that's the sort of default approach I take to everything. So, and what I mean by that is the scientific method, really, that way of thinking. I really love I think it's the scientific method is the most important, maybe, idea humanity's ever had. Created the Enlightenment and then modern science. So basically modern civilization depends on this idea of scientific method and experimentation and then updating your hypotheses and so on. And I think it's an incredibly powerful method, but I think it can be applied to more than just science. I think it can be applied to everyday living and indeed business. And that's what I've tried to do, is sort of take that to its limit. And I think that's what gives us an advantage in some ways as a research organization, as an engineering organization. Yes, we're in the middle of this probably the most ferocious competitive battle maybe tech has ever seen. But one of the things that I think gives us an edge is the rigor and precision we bring to our work, because we have a scientific method sort of at the heart of it, and we blend world-class research with world-class engineering with world-class infrastructure. And I think you need all three of those things to be at the frontier of something like AI. And I think we're sort of pretty unique in having world-class capabilities in all those areas.
So in Axios fashion, we're going to divide our conversation between zoom out and zoom in. So zoom out, getting your priceless mind on the state of AI. So we're going to talk about the blunt state of AI. And what I'm going to ask from you is, given the known knowns today, be blunt, clinical, no hype, no soft selling. Can we do that?
Sure. I'll do my best.
All right. What does the next 12 months of progress look like? What do you believe that if we sit here a year from today, and I would love to, what will have changed in the world?
I think the things that we're pressing hard on are the convergence of modalities. So Gemini, which is our main foundation model, has always been multimodal from the beginning. It takes images, video, text, audio, and then can now increasingly produce those types of outputs as well. And I think we're getting some really interesting cross-pollination by being multimodal. The best example of that is our latest image model, Nano Banana Pro, which I think shows some astonishing sort of understanding of visuals, and it can kind of create infographics that are really accurate and so on. So I think over the next year you're going to see that progress a lot. And I think, for example, in video, when that converges with the language models, you're going to see some very interesting combinations of capabilities there. I think the other things we're going to see over the next year, and I'm personally working on, is world models. So we have this system called Genie 3, which is like an interactive video model you can think about. So you can sort of generate a video, but then you can start walking around it like you're in a game or simulation, and it stays coherent for a minute. I think that's very exciting. And then, maybe the other thing is agent-based systems. So I think the field's been talking a lot about agents, but then they're not reliable yet enough to do full tasks. But I think over the next
We've heard a lot about that today here on the Axios stage. What would you say a year from now? How will agents have progressed? What's an example of how it will work in everyday life a year from now?
Well, look, we have this concept of a universal assistant that we want Gemini eventually to become. I think this is also you're going to see from us over the next year. This will be on more devices as well. By universal, we mean it's not just on your computer or your laptop or your phone, but maybe it comes around with you on glasses or other devices. And I think it needs. We want to create something that is useful to you in your everyday life, that you consult many times a day. It becomes a part of the fabric of your life, and it just improves your productivity, but also your personal life, recommendations for books and films and other activities that you'd like. But agents at the moment, you can't delegate to them a whole task and be sure they're going to complete that entire task completely reliably.
But a year from now, you think they will?
I think a year from now, we'll start having agents that are close to doing that.
And bull case, bear case. What is the best case for what AI can do for the world, and what do you fear most?
Well, look, the best case scenario that I've always dreamed about, and why I've worked my whole life on AI, and getting closer to this moment we've been working towards for decades now, many of us, is a kind of, I've sometimes called it radical abundance. So this idea we solved a lot of the biggest issues confronting society and humanity today. So whether that's free, renewable, clean energy, maybe we solve fusion, or better optimal batteries and solar materials, semiconductors, material science. We've solved a lot of diseases. So then we're in a situation where, we're in this new era, post-scarcity era, and where potentially, humanity is flourishing and traveling to the stars and spreading consciousness to the galaxy.
And what do you fear most?
Well, even that utopian kind of view has some questions around it about what will be our purpose as humans if there are these technologies and that are out there that are solving all these problems. Yes. What will be left to solve?
Yes.
I worry about that as a scientist, and the scientific method even. So there's that. But there's also obviously the well-known challenges and risks with AI of, twofold. One is bad actors using AI for harmful ends, or the AI itself, as it gets closer to AGI and becomes more agentic, it goes off the rails in some way that harms humanity.
So you mentioned going off the rails.
Yes.
How worried are you about these catastrophic outcomes, your level of concern? I'm just going to rattle them off. One, pathogens created by an evil actor using AI.
Mm-hmm. I think that's definitely one of the bad use case scenarios that we have to guard against, for sure.
Energy or water cyber terror using AI by a foreign actor.
Yeah, that's probably almost already happening now, I would say. Maybe not with very sophisticated AI yet, but I think that's the most obvious vulnerable vector, and which is why we focus quite a lot, and we are focusing quite a lot as Google and as DeepMind on AI for cybersecurity, so to power up the defensive side of that equation.
AI operating outside human control on its own.
Well, this goes back to the agentic stuff, where I think as that becomes more sophisticated, and it's clear why the industry will build those things, because they'll be more useful as things like assistants. So they're definitely going to happen, but the more agentic and autonomous they are, the more room there is for these things to deviate from what you maybe had intended when you gave the initial instruction or the initial goal. So this is a very active area of research, which is to how to make sure that systems that maybe are capable of continual learning or online learning stay within the guardrails that you set. I mean, I think the good news is because AI is become so big commercially and for enterprises, if you think about renting or selling one of your agents as a model provider, leading model provider to another big business, those businesses will want guarantees around the agent's behavior, what it does with their data, what it does with the customers, and if those things go wrong, they're not going to be existential in any way, but you'll lose the business for sure. So, because why would that business enterprise go with that provider? They would choose a different provider that was more responsible and had better guarantees. So I think what's great about that is capitalism will reward sort of naturally, ideally, more responsible actors.
But it's possible that the AI could jump the moat, jump the guardrail.
Potentially, if done wrong. I mean, there was always a possibility where nobody really knows what that's one of the big unknowns. I think it's non-zero, that potential. So it's worth very seriously considering and mitigating against. But I hear people talk, give very precise percentages about what the chances of these.
Yeah, a P-doom.
A P-doom, which I think is kind of nonsense because no one knows what it is. So what I know is it's.
So you don't quantify it, but you say it's
non-zero. So clearly, if your P-doom is non-zero, then you must put significant resources and attention on that.
Where is the U.S. winning the AI race against China, and where are we losing?
I think that we're still in the U.S. and in the West in the lead. If you look at the latest benchmarks and the latest systems, but they're not, China is not far behind. If you look at the latest DeepSeek or the latest models, they're very good. And there are some very capable teams there. So maybe the lead is only a matter of months as opposed to years at this point.
Because when you put chips aside, China probably is winning.
No, I think chips is one thing, but I think algorithmically, innovation-wise, I think the West still has the edge. So I don't think any of the Chinese models or companies have shown they can innovate on algorithmically something new that beyond the state of the art. They've been very good at fast sort of following the current state of the art.
Our last zoom out question, and you're going to like this one. What's the most astonishing thing about AI that you think gets shockingly little attention? The most astonishing thing about AI that gets shocking little attention.
Yeah, I think if I think of the things we're working on and already have working, it's the multimodal understanding these models have. Like if you
multimodal is video.
Yes, video, image, and I mean audio. But I'm thinking specifically video actually. So if you give Gemini a YouTube video to process, you can ask it all sorts of incredible things about the video. That it's just sort of mind blowing to me that it can understand sort of conceptually in a lot of cases, like not always, but in many really impressive cases, what's happening. Can understand the nuance.
What's an example of a question?
Well, I've asked questions on like. Look, this was just something I tested Gemini on the other day. I love the film Fight Club, and there's some scene in it, I think, where Brad Pitt or maybe it's Ed Norton, I can't remember, takes off his ring before having a fight, and the sort of I asked Gemini, like, what's the significance of that action? And it came up with a very interesting sort of philosophical point about leaving behind everyday life and just sort of symbolically showing that was very interesting kind of meta insight that these systems have now. And I think if you use it, the other thing that's sort of not appreciated is like we have this thing called Gemini Live where you can point your phone at something and say you're a mechanic, it can actually just help you with whatever task you have in front of you. Ideally, that should be glasses. devices because you want to have your hands free really for that. But I think people don't realize how powerful that multimodality capability is yet.
All right, you've given us the perfect bridge and transition to zooming in. Congratulations on Gemini 3.
Thank you.
Last month, your game-changing model, you say it reasons with unprecedented depth and nuance. Tell us what's unique about the nuance part of Gemini 3.
Yeah, I think it's just we're really pleased with the almost the personality of it, the style of it, as well as its capability. I like the way that it answers succinctly. It pushes back a little bit it doesn't just agree with whatever you're saying. It pushes back gently on some ideas that if they don't make sense. And I think people are appreciating. It seems as sort of. I feel like you can feel it's a bit of a step change in its kind of intelligence and therefore usefulness.
And what's something that Gemini has answered or produced where you said, I didn't know it could do that, or I didn't know it would do that?
Well, actually, this is the amazing thing of why we love what we're doing so much is that this era we're now in with research connected to product. The great thing about that is that you get millions and potentially at Google billions of users immediately taking advantage of the new technology you put out there. And we're continually surprised by the cool things that people figure out very quickly to use these models for. And a lot of those things sort of tend to go viral. But the thing I most enjoyed with Gemini 3 was one-shotting games. So back to my very first career of making AI for games, I think we're very close now with these models, maybe the next version of models where you could start really creating perhaps commercial grade games, vibe coding them in a few hours, which used to take years.
And that shows nuance. What does that show about the model?
Well, I think it's just incredible depth and capability of these models to understand very high level instructions and produce very detailed outputs. And the other things that Gemini 3 specifically is good at is front-end work and developing websites, and it's pretty good aesthetically and creatively as well as technically.
Something we've written a fair amount about at Axios is that even the authors, creators of these models don't totally understand them. What's something about Gemini 3 that you feel like you don't totally get?
Well, actually, I feel like with all these models, and maybe all of the audience are feeling this too, is that there's such a fast pace of innovation and improvement. We're spending almost all of our time building these things. I have to have this feeling every time we release a new version that I haven't even explored had time to even explore a tenth of probably what the existing systems can do. Because of course we're on to immediately, we're referencing back to the ferocious race and competition we're in. We're immediately focusing on the next innovation and obviously making sure it's safe and reliable and all those things. So again, our users end up taking them much further than often we've tried internally.
And one more question on Gemini 3, a little back story. And you had a number of irons in the fire, but LLMs, the text-based large language models, you didn't necessarily go all in on that as the holy grail. Something that Walter Isaacson, the great author and thinker and your friend, said to me is that when you saw the power of the LLM, you did a pivot, a pirouette, as Walter said it, and were able to leapfrog to great success. And Walter's point was that most business people would have been stubborn, might have doubled, tripled down on their other bets. How did you make this decision to go all in on your LLM?
Well, I think this is, again, the beauty of and the strength of the scientific method. If you're a true scientist, you can't get too dogmatic about some idea you have. You need to go with where the empirical evidence is taking you. So first of all, this is Walter was probably referring back to the 2017, 2018 era. So there we had a lot of irons in the fire, as we said. We had our own very capable language models that were called Chinchilla and then Sparrow. We had these various different code names for them. They weren't publicly released, but they were internal. In fact, some of the scaling laws were originally figured out by our team. They're called the Chinchilla scaling laws. But we also had other types of programs, AlphaZero, things that were building on AlphaGo, pure RL systems. And we also had some cognitive science, more neuroscience-inspired architectures as well. And at the time, we weren't sure, my job is to make sure we build AGI first, fast, and safely, right? That's always been our solve intelligence, our mission at DeepMind. And so I'm kind of agnostic, actually, to the approach that's taken. I'm pretty pragmatic on that. That's maybe my engineering side of me is, I have some theories, as a good scientist would, but I'm at the end of the day, it's got to pragmatically work. And so when we started seeing the beginnings of scaling working, then we increasingly put more and more resources onto that branch of the research tree.
Something that's refreshing about your approach is with artificial general intelligence, human-capable AI, you don't shy away from it. Some other people say, well, we won't know, or we're already there, or it doesn't matter. You say that it does matter, and we will know, and you say it's not far off.
Yeah, we're definitely not there now. So,
well, actually quite close is how you say.
Yes, quite close.
Yes,
I think we're like 5 to 10 years away, if you were to ask me.
I'm sorry,
I think
say that again.
5 to 10 years away.
Yep.
I think my bar, though, is quite high. So this is we define AGI as, a system that exhibits all the cognitive capabilities we have. And that includes inventive and creative capabilities. I think there are missing, as all of you have used the current LLMs, they're amazing in some ways, they're really impressive in some senses, they've got incredible, almost PhD levels, key skills in some areas, IMO gold medals and so on, but in other areas, they're very flawed still. And so they're these sort of jagged intelligences. So you would expect across the board consistency from a true AGI, and they're missing other capabilities like continual learning, online learning, long-term planning and reasoning. They can't do any of these things currently. I think they will be able to, but maybe 1 or 2 more breakthroughs are going to be required.
And a question from the great Ina Fried, who we've seen today and whose coverage from day 0 of Axios has helped make Axios what it is. She says, you're obviously, you've said that AI might be 1 advance, 2 advances away from AGI.
Yes.
Will we get there just by improving LLMs and generative AI, or do you think that there might be a different approach that's needed to hit AGI in your 5 to 10 years?
I think again, this is an empirical question, but what I do know, this would be my best guess, is the scaling of the current systems, we must push that to the maximum, because at the minimum, it will be a key component of the final AGI system. It could be the entirety of the AGI system. There's a chance that just scaling will get you there. But my guess is, if I was to guess from where my vantage point now, is that 1 or 2 more big breakthroughs, when I mean, there's innovation going on all the time, by the way, even including in scaling existing techniques. But I'm talking like a transformer level or AlphaGo level type of breakthrough. I think I suspect, when we look back once AGI is done, that 1 or 2 of those things were still required, in addition to scaling.
We're about to get the hook, so a super rapid round. Another question from Ina. You obviously are a big believer in AI, but if you look at what's being spent, that doesn't mean that there might not be a big enough bubble to rattle the economy. How worried are you about that?
I think it's not a binary. I think some parts of the AI industry are probably in a bubble, like, I don't know, like the seed rounds of, $50 billion seed rounds and things like that seems a little bit unsustainable. But on the other hand, of course, or more than anyone, believes that AI is the most transformative technology ever. So I think in the fullness of time, this is all going to be more than justified. And my job as head of Google DeepMind and the engine room of Google is to make sure we win either way, if the so-called bubble bursts, or if things continue to be good like they are now. We're in a strong position.
The AI recruiting wars, what's the end state of this competition for talent?
Well, look, it's gone pretty crazy recently, things like what Meta have been doing, and everyone's got to do what makes sense for them. What we found for us is that we want people who are mission-driven. We have, I think, the best mission. We have the full stack. So I think if you want to do the most impactful work and have the most positive impact on the world, then I think there's nowhere better than at Google DeepMind. And in the end, I think the best scientists, the best researchers, the best engineers, they want to work on the most cutting-edge stuff. So if you're the sort of top of the leaderboards with the best systems, that's sort of a self-fueling.
This is a question from James Vandehei, an entrepreneurial young mind at High Point University in North Carolina. He says there's a lot of conversation about AI gaining a mind of its own. Is there a scenario where AI could act in its self-interest?
Well, it's a great question, and it's related to some of the more sort of catastrophic outcomes. Is if that went wrong, that would be one of the issues that with agent-based systems or very autonomous systems, if somehow they developed a self-interest that was in some sense conflicting with what the designers or even perhaps humanity wanted it to do.
And finishing with a fun thing, you're still a gamer. Yes. What does gaming teach us about the world, and what does gaming teach us about where these machines are headed?
Well, look, I think my chess background and my training in that, and then other games subsequently, has been critical to how I do my work, and both in business and in science. I think the thing I love about games, and there's many things I've loved about them, but I love the creativity of making them, but I also just playing them, I think, is the best way to train your mind, because the best games, whether that's chess or Go or whatever, or poker, they're microcosms of something in the real world, right? But in general, you don't get in the real world to have several practice goes at making the decision correctly in that moment. Maybe in the real life, you only get a dozen of those critical moments, but you can practice your decision-making capabilities as much as you want within the almost a simulation really of the world with games. And as long as you take the games very seriously, so you put a lot of thought into your decision making, it really does train your decision making and planning capabilities, in my opinion.
Now, you've pointed out that our squishy brains evolved to be hunter-gatherers, and yet we're facing a disruption that, as you put it to The Guardian, will be 10 times bigger than the Industrial Revolution and maybe 10 times faster. Are we facing a situation where most humans can't keep up, and maybe no human, including you, can keep up?
Well, the good news is, and I think my point on the hunter-gatherer was, look how adaptive our brains have been. We evolved to be hunter-gatherers, and yet here we are sitting in our modern cities, modern civilization with all the technology around us. And you know, the same human brain pretty much has been able to adapt to that. So I'm a really big believer in human ingenuity, and I think we're infinitely adaptable. We are the only existence proof, our brains are the only existence proof of general intelligence, perhaps in the known universe that we know of so far. So we are general intelligences ourselves, and so we should be able to infinitely adapt. There is a question about when AGI, post-AGI, what kinds of technologies can we create, brain-computer interfaces, other things that some of us may choose to use in addition to our existing technologies, and that could be one way for us to keep up.
And as we say goodbye, you're a lifelong Liverpool fan. You've helped them with their analytics. How will AI affect and inform the World Cup here in North America?
Well, we've had a lot of teams approach us for help too, and I have to try and be equal with that. But it's hard having a lifelong supporter of Liverpool. But I'm looking forward to trying to make it out here, maybe at least for the World Cup final.
But let's be serious. What will it change between now and then? It's a lifetime in AI between now and then, right?
Yeah. Well, what, in AI or AI for sport, or just in?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, sport has an immense amount of data, and it's all about extreme elite performance. So it's actually a natural bedfellow for AI to come in and help optimize that process even further.
And without giving away a trade secret, what will it be able to do for a World Cup team?
Maybe score more headers from corners. If you place that's one of the things I think our system found out, like precise positioning of the players.
Demis Hassabis, thanks for making Axios and the world smarter faster. Thank you for a great conversation. Thank all of you for a great summit. We thank the Axios partners who made all these conversations possible. Thank the Axios events team, which for months and months and months has been working on pulling this day together. For those of you who are in real life, we'd love to see you upstairs for a drink. I'll be joining you. If you're around the world, we'd love to see you online with Axios newsletters. Thank you for a great day. I'll see you on Axios.com.